Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku, back with another fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Had Kami's Gift. Now before starting, please give this video a like. And subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. When he was 4, Izuku believed he was quirkless and powerless. However, everything changed when he received a gift and a curse from Kami herself, awakening his potential. On this particular day, Kasumi was picking on a girl she deemed inferior. This time, however, Izuku felt compelled to intervene. He called out to Kasumi, insisting that the girl couldn't defend herself. Kasumi retorted, questioning what made him any different, and then unleashed a powerful explosion in his direction. In that moment, Izuku felt as if he were staring death in the face. But just before he succumbed, he found himself in a pure white space, where a single woman stood before him. She was petite and wore a flowing white dress adorned with a bow, her hair styled in playful pigtails. The woman introduced herself as Kami, but told Izuku he could call her Hestia in this form. Izuku was taken aback and asked how she knew his name. Hestia explained that she watched over the universe and that he was there for a special reason, to receive a gift. Curious, Izuku asked what the gift was. Hestia playfully teased him before revealing that he would receive a quirk called Adaptive Resurrection. This quirk would allow him to wake up with a new ability each time he died, though he could only use one quirk at a time, often taking a form of her choosing. Izuku was bewildered and asked why she would grant him such power. Hestia expressed her fondness for him and her desire for him to pursue his dream of becoming a hero, in exchange for being her personal companion when she wished. Nervously, he accepted, and she bestowed the quirk upon him. Hestia then informed him that he needed to choose a quirk quickly to avoid danger. His options were Kitsune Physiology, Hemokinetic Constructs, or Avian Physiology. Unsure, Izuku asked for explanations. Hestia described Kitsune Physiology as granting him the abilities of a fox spirit, including enhanced senses and flight, but requiring him to take that form to use the powers. Avian Physiology would allow him to sprout wings and adapt to various environments, but also required a specific form. Later that day, Izuku went about his routine, working at the Pale Moon Cafe before heading to school. On his way, a massive villain with a triangular head disrupted traffic, engaging in a battle with Kamui Woods. Kamui attempted to capture the villain with his lacquered chains prison, but was interrupted by a giant woman who introduced herself as MT Lady with a rather unfortunate pun. Izuku sighed, wondering what had happened to the heroic figures he admired, like All Might. Realizing he was late for school, he hurried along. Lady, having subdued the villain, noticed him and offered to help him get to school. Gratefully, he accepted her assistance. She playfully picked him up and, with a swift motion, dropped him off at school. Once inside, Izuku rushed to class, barely making it on time. As he waited for the lesson to begin, he took notes on MT Lady's quirk, preparing for any future encounters. Their teacher entered, announcing a discussion on high school applications, but quickly shifted the focus to their aspirations of becoming heroes, tossing papers into the air. While his classmates cheered, Izuku continued to write in his notebook. Kasumi, ever the loud one, declared that she and Izuku were destined for UA, drawing laughter from their peers. Izuku felt the sting of their mockery, knowing he was recorded as quirkless due to Hestia's instructions to keep a low profile. As the teacher regained control of the class, the day continued with mundane lessons. After school, Kasumi approached him, urging him to stand up for himself and use his quirk. Izuku, feeling the pressure, asked to talk later, explaining he needed to help at the cafe. He quickly left, leaving Kasumi frustrated behind him. On his way to the cafe, Izuku took a longer route, contemplating his future at UA and the inevitable need to reveal his quirk. Suddenly, he found himself ensnared in a thick mass of slime, caught off guard by a villain's taunt about having a new meat shield. The sludge villain attempted to invade Izuku's mouth, but he was suddenly transported back into his mindscape. Hestia, his guide, informed him that he would need 2 quirks this time to filter the poison and deal with the sludge villain. 2 orbs appeared on her right, representing hemokinetic constructs and blood healing, while 3 orbs appeared on her left, representing voice manipulation, frost manipulation, and Leviathan physiology. Izuku chose the hemokinetic constructs and kissed Hestia, feeling a surge of energy before returning to his normal state. He then selected voice manipulation from the left orbs, knowing he might not get another chance to use it. After Hestia kissed him again, he was enveloped in a bright light, and when it faded, he found himself back in reality, struggling against the sludge. With determination, he unleashed a powerful sonic screech, expelling the sludge from his lungs. As he looked around, he saw the remnants of the villains scattered beneath the bridge. He quickly collected the sludge into a soda bottle, ready to hand it over to the authorities. Just then, he heard a familiar voice calling out to him. Waving the bottle, he called out to All Might, who thanked him for capturing the villain before he headed off to the cafe. After a brief time working at the Pale Moon Cafe, a loud explosion echoed from a few blocks away. Izuku informed his mother that he was going to investigate, receiving a warning to stay safe. Transforming back into his hero form, he rushed toward the chaos. Upon arrival, he spotted the sludge villain holding Kasumi hostage. Kamui Woods called out for help, but the other heroes were hesitant, each offering excuses that frustrated Izuku. Determined to act, he activated his hemokinetic quirk to form a blade, feeling a sharp pain in his wrists as he did so. He swung the blade toward the villain's eyes and mouth, creating an opening to rescue Kasumi. With a shout of "Sonic Scatter," he unleashed his power, causing the villain to disperse and extinguishing the flames by replacing the oxygen in the area. Exhausted but relieved, he thought to himself that he had succeeded. Just then, a lady grabbed him, releasing Kasumi and praising his efforts, nearly deafening him with her enthusiasm. Feeling overwhelmed, Izuku transformed into his kitsune form and flew away from the scene, wanting to avoid the media frenzy. After some time, he landed and reverted to his normal state. Suddenly, Might appeared behind him, transforming into a future version of himself. Izuku greeted him, and All Might expressed his desire to talk privately. They headed to the cafe, which was closed for the day. Once inside, All Might inquired about Izuku's instincts during the crisis. Izuku explained that his legs had moved on their own, driven by the need to save Kasumi, a childhood friend who had once bullied him for not having a quirk. All Might acknowledged the significance of Izuku's instincts and expressed his belief that he had the potential to become a true hero. He offered to personally train him, to which Izuku eagerly accepted, introducing himself as Izuku Midoriya. He explained that his other form was known as Kuriyuki, suggesting they discuss it further during their training. All Might, now introducing himself as Yagi Tashinori, instructed Izuku to meet him the next day at Dagoba Municipal Beach for their training. After 7 months of cleaning Dagoba Municipal Beach, Izuku was granted the quirk 1 for all by All Might. For the last 2 months, he had been training with the quirks he had acquired, and now he could fight All Might at 5% for half an hour before losing or passing out. After all that rigorous training, Izuku had developed a toned physique and had trained his quirk to match most pro heroes. However, he felt uncertain about what UA had in store for their entrance exam. At that moment, he had 2 tails in his kitsune form and had become a voice actor, gaining recognition for the Pale Moon Cafe and achieving a stable financial situation. Kasen called up the stairs, urging him to hurry. He scrambled down in his middle school uniform, which concealed his features well. She handed him a necklace, telling him to think of it as a good luck charm and a thank you gift from both her and Eri. Izuku expressed his gratitude and promised to make her proud before rushing off to UA, determined to avoid any mishaps. After the written exam, he felt confident he had performed well, but the physical exam loomed ahead. He knew many others had more training than he did, but he refused to let that discourage him. He was determined to make his mother proud and earn All Might's trust as his successor. Lost in thought, Izuku tripped over a rock but found himself floating back to his feet, thanks to Ochako Uraraka, a girl with a round face who had used her quirk to help him. He introduced himself and wished her luck before she ran off, leaving him with a strange feeling that her eyes had sparkled for a moment. After present mix assembly, Izuku arrived at the mock city in his new green tracksuit, which replaced the one he had torn during his intense workouts. As he surveyed his opponents, he overheard someone dismissing him as quirkless. Undeterred, he decided to wish Uraraka good luck but was interrupted by a blue-haired boy with square glasses, who warned him to stay away from her. Izuku clarified that he only intended to offer encouragement, reminding the boy not to underestimate him. When Present Mike shouted, "Start!" Izuku transformed into his kitsune form and dashed toward the robots near the entrance. He felt a rush of adrenaline as he moved swiftly, using his fire to melt the robots in his path, quickly racking up points. As the exam progressed, he accumulated 52 villain points but soon noticed a giant robot looming over the city, the zero-pointer. Determined to help, he flew close to the ground, rescuing people trapped under rubble. When he spotted Uraraka in trouble, he switched to his normal form and channeled 5% of One for All throughout his body, launching himself at the robot's face with a powerful punch that shattered its upper half. After transforming back to help Uraraka, he checked on her well-being. She seemed disoriented but was relieved to see him. An elderly woman approached, identifying herself as Recovery Girl, and offered to heal Uraraka's leg before moving on to assist other applicants. Izuku then asked Uraraka if she needed a ride home. She agreed, and he offered to accompany her, even though he usually preferred not to take the train. After helping her home, he returned to his regular shift at the cafe. 2 weeks later, he received an acceptance letter from UA, revealing he had placed first with 52 villain points and 65 hero points. That night, Tashinori-sensei summoned him to Dagoba Municipal Beach for a meeting. Upon arrival, Izuku found him waiting on the beach. Tashinori congratulated him and offered a warning about his upcoming class, reminding him that his classmates had quirks they had honed for longer than he had. Izuku expressed confidence in his abilities, feeling ready for the challenges ahead. That idea faded away as the realization struck about how awkward it would have been. Instead, a plan formed to switch some students from Class 1B to Class 1A and vice versa for some of the boys in Class 1A. After the entrance exam, boredom set in, prompting a search for ways to kickstart a hero career early. The options seemed limited to gaining popularity or becoming a vigilante. Gaining popularity would mean being seen as the very heroes I wanted to avoid, while being a vigilante would cast me as a villain trying to do good. Neither option seemed detrimental to my dreams, so I decided to start with singing, as one of my quirks suited it perfectly. Perhaps I could launch both careers simultaneously. A week later, I decided to utilize the shape-shifting aspect of my kitsune physiology quirk for my vigilante work, transforming my hair back to white while maintaining the blonde form for my hero persona. Although I felt a bit nervous when Hestia-sama complimented the form, a more pressing matter awaited, like the rampaging rhino guy wreaking havoc in the city. Approaching the massive figure, I held onto his horn as he prepared to charge into another building. He introduced himself as Rhino and swung a punch in my direction, which I deftly dodged. I introduced myself as Omni, noting his lack of originality before taking to the skies, ready to sing and fight simultaneously. As I performed a backflip over Rhino, I kicked him in the back, singing about diving into the water and embracing the future. I flew with his horn in hand, tossing him into the air. My song continued, emphasizing the potential to be larger than life, to fly higher than the sky, and to shine brighter than the stars. I unleashed fire from my hands and tails, but it barely singed his hide. As he began to fall, he charged at me, and I braced myself to intercept. The atmosphere shifted as I charged back at him, but just before impact, I flew behind him, grabbing his leg and spinning him around to throw him into the open street. Once there, he thrashed wildly, which I anticipated due to my insanity-inducing ability. While he caused chaos, I took the opportunity to guide civilians away from danger. After evacuating everyone, I prepared to unleash a powerful stream of fire, continuing to sing about the hopes and dreams of every boy and girl. As I shot blue fire from my mouth, hands, and tails toward Rhino, the battle reached its climax. Eventually, he lay unconscious, his hide singed. I quickly retreated into an alleyway, transforming back into Izuku. The battle had drained me, and I realized I needed to be cautious with such firepower in the future. Returning to the cafe, I was greeted by Yu Takayama and Yagi Tashinori, who were waiting for me. Nervously, I stood before them, unsure of what they needed. Toshinori-sensei questioned why I had engaged a villain, reminding me that using my quirk without a license was against the law. I argued that if I hadn't intervened, civilians could have been hurt, and heroes might have hesitated, making excuses. Toshinori-sensei acknowledged my point but warned that my actions could lead to jail time. I insisted that even if I faced imprisonment or worse, knowing I had made people safer brought me peace. As I turned to the television, a news report discussed my altercation with Rhino, noting that I had taken down a villain suspected to be on par with Crimson Riot's defense. The commentary highlighted my prioritization of civilian safety over personal glory, suggesting that if they found me, imprisoning me would be a crime against society. They had saved innocent lives and defeated a villain that would typically require a team of pro-heroes to overcome, so they were allowed to continue their mission. Toshinori-sensei seemed to be facing mixed opinions about Omni. Some viewed them as a vigilante, while others considered them a hero. The protagonist pondered whether they could continue their efforts, reflecting on Eri and how they had saved her just a year prior. In a flashback from a year ago, it was closing time when a loud crash and the clanging of metal objects echoed outside. The protagonist stepped outside and followed the sounds into an alleyway, where a little white-haired girl was fleeing from a man with black hair and a beak-like appearance. The girl hid behind the protagonist's legs, trembling with fear. The man dismissed her concerns, claiming they were just playing a game. The protagonist firmly disagreed, stating that no game would frighten a child so much. As they attempted to call for help, the man silenced them with a hand over their mouth, insisting on avoiding unnecessary attention. In that moment, the protagonist felt their surroundings shift, and they reached out to Hestia-sama for assistance. They requested to be sent back in time just once, knowing that they would miss out on another quirk if they did. However, they were determined not to frighten the girl with an unfamiliar ability. Hestia-sama agreed, and time rewound. Now back in the alley, the protagonist transformed into their kitsune form, wrapping their tails around the man's hands. They confronted him, declaring that he would never defeat them and that if he tried to harm them, they would return even stronger. A blue fireball ignited in their hand as they commanded him to leave. After the man retreated, the protagonist offered to take the girl home, suggesting that perhaps Ka-san could adopt her. Returning to the present, the protagonist expressed to Toshinori-sensei their desire to prevent anyone from suffering like Eri or themselves. A tear slipped down their cheek as memories of their father surfaced. Toshinori-sensei sighed, acknowledging that it couldn't be helped and advised them to pursue their path without causing too much trouble before school began. 2 weeks later, the protagonist had not been out as Omni recently due to preparations for moving into the UA dorms and attending meetings with the UA staff regarding their quirk and role as Omni. The staff had encouraged them to be safe while gaining experience as a hero. Eri's voice called out from outside the door, reminding the protagonist that they would be late for school. They instructed Eri to tell Ka-san to prepare the car while they finished packing. After a few moments, they descended the stairs, dressed casually in jeans and a jacket, and donned their glasses. Before leaving the cafe, the protagonist reassured Ka-san and Eri that they would call every other day and visit on weekends. They hoped to move out of the dorms later in the year but reminded them to stay safe. Climbing into their Chevrolet Camaro, they drove off to UA. Upon arriving at the 1A dorms, the protagonist discovered that the dorms were organized by class but managed independently. After dropping off their belongings, they began preparing a meal for their classmates, who were expected around noon. One girl was already present, and the protagonist realized they had made too much food for just 22 people. They reconnected with Uraraka-san and learned the early arrival was Momo Yaoyorozu. By noon, the rest of their classmates arrived, and the protagonist formed friendships with Eijiro Kirishima and Fumikage Tokoyami. Excitedly, the protagonist called everyone to lunch, and as they entered the dining room, the sight of the food drew them in. They apologized for making too much, explaining that they had lost track of time while cooking. Everyone expressed their gratitude, with Yaoyorozu-san complimenting the meal's quality, likening it to a 5-star restaurant's offerings. The protagonist humbly acknowledged their cooking skills, mentioning that they often prepared similar dishes for Ka-san's cafe. Mina Ashida, a girl with pink skin, recognized them as the chef from Pale Moon Cafe and eagerly requested that they cook for the group daily. The protagonist introduced themselves as Izuku Midoriya, or Izu for short, while explaining their limited cooking availability due to work and training commitments. They suggested gathering in the lounge after dinner for introductions. After dinner, the protagonist prepared a similar meal and cleaned up once more as everyone settled in the lounge. Sitting next to Kasumi-chan, they prepared to lead the introductions. Yaoyorozu-san encouraged them to start, and the protagonists stood up. They introduced themselves, sharing their interests in reading, cooking, and helping others while expressing their dislike for messes, inappropriate behavior, and unnecessary violence. For his hobbies, he usually read, played, and listened to music, but occasionally trained his quirk and body. His goal was to become a hero who helped people in need and made them feel safe, just like the heroes of the first generation of quirks. Kasumi nudged him playfully, urging him to share about his quirk. He explained that his quirk was called Adaptive Resurrection, which allowed him to gain a new quirk every time he died, usually one that countered the reason for his death or was directly related to it. Curious, Ida asked what quirks he currently possessed. He listed them: Kitsune Physiology, Hemokinetic Construct, and Voice Manipulation, teasing that they would have to wait to learn what those quirks could do. He then suggested that Kasumi go next. Time skip introducing the classmates and their quirks. Kasumi Bakugo had the Explosion quirk, which allowed her to create explosions from her palms powered by her sweat, giving her an explosive personality. Sumiko Todoroki, a female version of Shoto, possessed the half-cold, half-hot quirk, enabling her to drastically lower temperatures with her right side and raise them with her left, unleashing fire with some control. Achiko Uraraka had the zero-gravity quirk, making anything she touched weightless until she released it by touching her fingers together. Momo Yaoyorozu could use her creation quirk to create any non-living object from exposed parts of her body. Eijiro Kirishima's hardening quirk allowed him to harden any part of his body. Tsuyu Azui had frog form, granting her the abilities of a frog. Mina Ashida could produce acid from her skin and control its solubility and viscosity. Toru Hagakure was invisible. Tenya Ida had the engine quirk, enabling him to move faster with engines on his calves. Daichi Kaminari could release volts of electricity from her body. Fumikage Tokoyami held a living shadow within him called Dark Shadow, which grew stronger in darkness. Minoru Mineta could take off the ball on his head that could stick to practically anything. Kyoka Jiro used the jacks on her earlobes to create sound waves or amplify her hearing. Yuga Aoyama shot a laser from his navel area. Itsuka Kendo could enlarge her fist, enhancing her strength. Koji Koda could communicate with animals. Mizo Shoji could morph any of his 6 hands into a mouth, ear, eye, or hand. Mashireo Ojiro had a tail. Hantasiro could shoot tape from his elbows. Ibara Shiozaki could create vines sprouting from the ground. Rikido Sato experienced a sugar rush, gaining a temporary boost in strength, speed, and durability after consuming sugar. The next day, after that informative day, he called his mother and prepared for his first day at UA. He noted that his uniform concealed most of his muscles, which was a relief, as it meant Kasumi would likely glare at him for his quirk rather than stare. He made katsudon for himself and waited for the rest of his class to wake up. When he sat down to eat, he noticed Yaoyorozu reading. She asked him to make her breakfast, dropping the honorific from his name. He agreed but reminded her that she owed him a favor. He mentioned that her charm wouldn't work on him, as his family was mostly female, and they often asked for favors in similar ways. She pouted as he headed to the kitchen, asking for grilled fish. After he returned with her food, she devoured it quickly while he began to eat as the others arrived and prepared their breakfast. After about an hour, they all walked to class, and he needed to report to the staff room for something. In the staff room, he announced his arrival, and Tashinori welcomed him, explaining that they needed to discuss the day ahead. He saw Midnight, Cementos, Ectoplasm, and Present Mike present. Tashinori informed him that the class would conduct a quirk evaluation test, and they would be watching closely to ensure everyone performed at their best, warning him that failure could lead to expulsion. He replied that he understood but couldn't go all out. Midnight questioned why, and he explained that he didn't want to harm himself during the test and believed in the potential of his peers, not wanting to ruin that. When he arrived in Class 1A, he heard someone yelling through the wall. Ida was scolding Kasumi about respect for upperclassmen. As he entered, Kasumi spotted him and excitedly saved him a seat, pointing to the one behind hers, which was next to Ibara Shiozaki. Kasumi asked what the teachers wanted, and he explained that they warned him about using his quirk during the evaluation test. After dinner that night, he lay in his room, contemplating how much more he could do for the world. When that thought crossed my mind, I replayed the memory of my fight with the rhino and began to mumble to myself. It had been 2 weeks since I had gone out as Omni. If I ventured out now, I would face punishment from my mentors. Hopefully, Midnight Sensei wasn't as sadistic as I had heard. But I could save more lives than this generation's heroes, so I might as well go for it. With that resolve, I transformed into Kuriyuki and jumped out of my window, ready to embrace my role as a true hero. After some searching, I stumbled upon a bank robbery involving 2 women clad in peculiar cat-themed suits. They were battling a silver-haired woman dressed in a sleek black suit. Another villain, I thought. I hoped I wouldn't be defeated or lose this form. At least I could manage my emotions in this state. I silently wished for Hestia-sama to be asleep before I leaped into the fray, focusing on the woman robbing the bank. Having been absent for 2 weeks, I remarked on her sudden emergence from the shadows. I charged at her, launching blue fireballs from the tips of my 2 tails. She sidestepped my attack effortlessly, whispering that I would need to do better than that. She introduced herself as Black Cat, claiming she was no fool like the rhino and that my brute force would not work on her. I introduced myself as Omni, pleased to have a worthy opponent. Using the momentum from my charge, I swung around and kicked her in the abdomen. I followed up with a fireball from my hand, but she leaped over it with ease. Black Cat then snapped her fingers, plunging the area into darkness. The only light came from the fireballs at the tips of my tails, which would reveal my position but also provided me with visibility. I contemplated transforming back to my normal self to see if that would help, reminding myself that my goal was to defeat Black Cat, not to seek fame. I closed my eyes, focusing on listening for her movements. Suddenly, I felt her presence close behind me, and I froze in surprise as she commented on my appearance. Regaining my composure, I activated a fraction of 1 for all, green lightning crackling around me. I released her grip and tossed her over my shoulder. She expressed her surprise at my strength, but I dismissed her with indifference. As my wrists were scratched and my blood formed crimson HNFFS around her wrists, she teased me, but I dragged her out of the dark bank and handed her over to the police. I cautioned the officer to be careful with her, momentarily forgetting that I was not in my Kuriyuki form but as Izuku. A blonde woman in a blue cat-themed costume shouted in recognition, claiming me as hers. The blonde soon clung to my arm, but I quickly shook her off, stating that I had to leave. I transformed back into Kuriyuki and took to the skies, soaring into the city. After some flying, I spotted a man downtown clad in strange armor, wielding whips made of laser or photon energy. I landed a distance away from him, alongside Gunhead. Gunhead shouted my name, drawing the villain's attention to me. I explained that I had grown bored waiting to become a pro and thought I could do more now than later. Switching back to Izuku, I used the blood from my wrists to cover my hands with a protective armor. I charged at the villain, who attempted to slice me in half with his whips. I slid under the attacks and grabbed his armored leg, using my momentum to trip him. He cursed at me, struggling to rise in his heavy suit. I taunted him, asserting that I could do more at 15 than he ever could. I slammed my fist into his back, creating a noticeable dent, and then leaped onto his shoulders. He demanded I get off, but his arms couldn't reach me. I declared that he wouldn't need his helmet in prison, ripped it off, and used my blood to enhance my jump. Taking a deep breath, I unleashed a powerful sonic screech that left him incapacitated. Gunhead complained that he could have handled the situation himself, but I pointed out that a few broken windows were preferable to him missing a shot and hitting a civilian. I needed a stress reliever, and with that, I transformed into Kuriyuki and flew back to the dorms. I landed in an alley a block away from the dorms and transformed back into Izuku as I entered the building. A stern yet feminine voice asked what had taken me so long. I rubbed the back of my head and realized I was speaking to Sumiko Todoroki, who wore shorts and a jacket over a black shirt. I inquired about her being awake, and she insisted I call her Sumiko, stepping closer and looking me directly in the eyes. Why were you on the news? Tell the truth, your ripped shirt and blood-stained clothes suggest otherwise. The response came with a hint of annoyance as he picked her up in a bridal style and placed her on the edge of the couch before sitting in a chair nearby. All right, I went out as Omni and stopped 2 villains, as you already know. Yeah, but why did you reveal your true identity to the world? She poked his chest, her curiosity evident. Well, when I fought Black Cat, I kind of forgot I was in this form. Now, I guess everyone knows, but that's not really a bad thing. After all, I don't have to save energy to maintain my form. Any other reason? He paused, considering her question. I kind of forgot about that. Plus, if I stayed in my kitsune form, I would have given away my location during that fight, which would have put me at a greater disadvantage than just dealing with my raging hormones. He chuckled at his own reasoning. At least you made it back safe, she mumbled to herself. Does the stoic Sumiko-chan worry about me? He teased, only to be pulled onto the couch with her on top of him. Yeah, idiot. I care about you. Don't go out without telling me. Her voice trembled slightly as she cried herself to sleep, and he soon followed, wrapping his arms around her. Don't worry, I promise to come back to you every time, he thought before drifting off, unaware that her lips formed a smile as they slept through the night. After that eventful night, he woke up to find Sumiko-chan still sleeping on him. He gently placed her back on the couch and went to prepare breakfast, but was interrupted by Yaoyorozu-san, who was watching the news. Midoriya-san, I didn't think you'd try something with a girl when you just started high school, she remarked, changing the channel. So what did you do last night? You're literally watching the news. The answer is right in front of you. I'm going to take a shower, let's continue this later, he replied before walking away. 20 minutes later, dressed in his uniform, he made a quick breakfast of katsudon and returned to Yaoyorozu-san. Anything else you wanted to talk about? Yeah. Why did you go out and pretend to be a hero when the teachers probably told you they were responsible for you? Think about it. Why should I wait a year or 2 to get my hero license when I could save lives now? What would you do with your great power? Fair point, but I'd use my power to protect innocent people. Also, why didn't you make some food for me? I told you it was a one-time thing, and you still owe me a favor. But if you want to protect people, why wait? After all, a hero's job is to protect others, even if their life is on the line. Not many pros hold that ideal. He finished his breakfast. Most heroes seek fame or wealth, but a true hero is admired for their courage, achievements, or noble qualities. These days, heroes are often just those who fight evil and protect the city, using their quirks for what is deemed the greater good. Yaoyorozu-san stared at him in shock just as Sumiko-chan woke up, and he began doing the dishes. How do you know so much about heroes? Not even the teachers could discuss heroes this deeply. Well, I grew up around heroes, retired or not. My family consists of heroes from around the world, many of whom formed under a company led by my grandmother. You may have heard of her, Captain Marvel. At that moment, he heard a thud behind him, followed by the sound of someone's jaw dropping in disbelief. Something wrong? He turned to see a sleepy Kasumi, Ashita-san on the floor, and Achiko holding her jaw in pain. Are you trying to brag, Izuku-san, or were you talking about ideology again? Kasumi asked, rubbing her eyes. Ideology, but maybe we can continue this conversation later, if you want. He picked up Sumiko-chan in a bridal style and carried her to her room. Later, while everyone waited for their hero studies teacher, he read articles about Omni. Most were questions like, what's their quirk? Or, is Omni a hero or villain? But they only made him wonder more about his own path. I'm coming through the door, a booming voice announced from outside the classroom. Like a normal person. The voice belonged to All Might, which elicited excited reactions from the students. Before they could fully express their admiration, he began speaking. Hello, young students. Today we'll be doing a special exercise in Field Beta, but first. He paused as a wall opened to reveal 20 metal briefcases. You'll get into your hero costumes, but as you suit up, I need to talk with young Midoriya. Once everyone grabbed their assigned case, he walked to Field Beta with all might. Sensei, what did you need to talk about? First of all, why didn't you submit your costume application? Well, my Kitsune form already comes with battle gear, and I can ask Hestia-sama to create clothes for me on the go. Plus, the suit wouldn't be of any use once I used a physiology quirk, so why bother with one when I technically have one at all times? Fair enough, but you went out again without telling anyone. Do you want the short answer or my life story? We have some time, share just a bit of your life story. I grew up in a family of heroes who would do anything to help those in need. Since I was quirkless, I was often made fun of by my peers, who used their quirks to harm me. When I came home, my cousins, aunts, and mother took care of me until those problems faded. Seems like they really cared for you, but I've never heard you talk about any of your male relatives. Plus, the quirk manifested when the character was around 4 years old, so it raised questions about how they were considered quirkless. The character had an extra toe joint, which led their family to doubt their quirk until it was finally revealed. Tragically, most of their male relatives had fallen victim to villains, as their family prioritized personality over quirks or looks in their relationships. Now, only one uncle remained, while the others had moved on to what was hoped to be a better place. This background might explain the character's lack of reaction to Midnight's quirk, which primarily dealt with pheromones and attraction. Regardless, the family's concerns about dying to gain a quirk had forced the character to convince everyone they were quirkless. Consequently, their life had revolved around working at a cafe and caring for the remaining family members. Despite this, the character admired their family for valuing others' lives above their own. Once quirks became commonplace, they made it a tradition to uphold that ideal, which inspired the character to save people even without a formal license. As they arrived at the field where everyone was waiting, All Might Sensei greeted the group enthusiastically, announcing that their exercise would be a trial by battle, with teams determined by lottery. The teams would consist of a 2-person hero team against a 2-person villain team. The character drew Team B, which meant they would be alone. All Might Sensei explained the goals for each team. The hero team needed to capture the villains using capture tape or by touching the bomb to win, while the villains could capture the heroes or stall until the match concluded. Each match would last 10 minutes, with All Might's peers observing and intervening if necessary. Suddenly, Midnight Sensei interjected, announcing the start of the matches with a mischievous smile. Team B, as the heroes, would face off against Teams A and E as the villains. The character, filled with a dark aura, expressed their frustration towards Midnight Sensei, who quickly sought refuge behind All Might Sensei. In the mindscape, the character encountered Hestia, who had transformed into a light green-haired woman in a flowing white dress adorned with golden decorations. She explained that while the quirks the character possessed could handle explosions, the injuries from falling through a window were serious. The character speculated about gaining a new quirk related to fire or water, but Hestia revealed a special ability for them, Limit Break. This ability would significantly enhance their current quirk, with the potential for permanent upgrades. However, it could only be used for 5 minutes or until the character unleashed their ultimate move, after which they would need to wait for another life or death scenario or regain energy to use it again. After receiving this new ability, the character returned to the real world, still falling, their necklace glowing with a symbol resembling a fox head. They called out Limit Break, Kitsune, and transformed, their body shifting into a smaller, more agile form, complete with fox ears and 9 tails. Once outside the second-floor window, the character challenged their opponent, Kasumi, to meet on the 5th floor for a real fight. They flew up and became intangible, passing through the wall. Inside, they spotted an ice wall blocking the entrance, with Sumiko-chan nearby and Yaoyorozu-san next to the bomb, wielding a metal staff. Sumiko-chan warned Yaoyorozu-san just as icicles were launched towards the character. In response, the character extended their tails and unleashed streams of white flames, melting the ice and the wall. They taunted their opponents, using their tails to capture Sumiko-chan and Yaoyorozu-san. covering their mouths until they were unconscious, leaving the character waiting for the next challenge. In the spectators' room, Kirishima cheered for the character's impressive move, while Tsuyu remarked on their heroic actions. Principal Nizu observed the monitors, noting that a true hero would employ quicker and less sympathetic methods when dealing with villains. Although Midoriya's previous battles were more realistic for heroes, he seemed to be holding back to avoid harming Todoroki or Yaoyorozu while stalling for time until Kendo and Bakugo arrived to fight him. Aizawa-sensei interrupted, suggesting they discuss the matches after they concluded and that they could use additional footage later for comparison. Back to the battle. Izuku's POV 5 minutes in. Finally, Kasumi and Kendo rushed toward him, and he remarked on their tardiness. Kasumi shouted at him before leaping into the air to launch an explosion at him. Seizing the opportunity, he dropped onto his back and kicked her in the stomach, sending her crashing through several floors as he prepared to face Kendo. Nervously, Kendo approached, running with her arms behind her. She clapped her hands together, enlarging them and causing a significant impact that knocked the wind out of Midoriya. He complimented her shot but then decided to take it a step further. Becoming intangible, he entered Kendo's body and enlarged his right fist, pulling it back and delivering a powerful punch to the falling Kasumi, knocking her out. With one last target in mind, he exited Kendo's body, leaving her in shock. He swiftly struck her neck with one of his tails and grabbed the faux bomb. All Might announced over his earpiece that the hero had won and instructed Midoriya to bring the girls back to the spectators' room. He agreed but requested someone check for injuries first. After gathering the girls, he turned intangible and flew to the spectators' room. After all the other battles. Once the battles concluded, Midoriya leaned against a wall, holding his ribcage and waiting for one of his teachers to speak. Principal Nizu introduced himself and began discussing the matches, asking who the students thought was the MVP. Yaoyorozu immediately raised her hand and was called upon. She expressed her belief that Midoriya deserved the title due to his strategic thinking and caution during their match. She detailed how he had fought Bakugo with the intention of using her anger against her but adjusted his plan when he assessed that his other opponents would be easier to handle later. She praised his well-thought-out tactics that resulted in minimal damage to the building and how he effectively utilized Kendo's quirk to defeat Bakugo without sustaining harm himself. Midoriya interjected, explaining that he had not anticipated the super move from Kasumi or the new power he had gained for the latter part of the match. He admitted that he had originally planned to take out his opponents one at a time but had to adapt his strategy last minute due to underestimating them. His unexpected power boost had helped him defeat who he considered the strongest opponent first. Yaoyorozu and Sumiko blushed at his honesty. Nizu commented on Midoriya's reluctance to accept compliments, likening it to a vampire's aversion to light. He acknowledged the unexpected power boost as a likely reason for Midoriya's victory but asked if his ability was meant to work that way. Midoriya confirmed that he had other quirks to counter Kasumi's explosions, but Athena had granted him an ability called Limit Break, which provided a significant power boost for a limited time. He explained that this ability was intended to help him in dire situations, given to him by Cammy herself. As he finished, he noticed a mix of confusion, jealousy, and anger from his classmates. Tsuyu suggested they go out for dinner, inviting their teachers to join them, which piqued the interest of their class and All Might. All Might enthusiastically agreed, whispering that Midoriya's cooking was exceptional. Midoriya, surprised by the attention, mentioned that he had work to do that weekend and would leave them to fend for themselves for food after today. In unison, Class 1A expressed their disbelief at his statement. Each generation seeks new symbols, new people, new names, striving to separate themselves from their predecessors. It was Friday, and the classes had been quite normal as the results of the quirk evaluation and battle trial were still pending. Izuku was in his room, tinkering with a new utility for his hero outings. He was crafting nearly indestructible bracelets to bolster his defense and store energy for his limit burst ability. Suddenly, he felt a familiar presence. Athena communicated with him, asking if he was going for another hero outing that day. Izuku confirmed, mentioning he would need her to pull him into the mindscape again. She playfully responded that she would be dragging him to an astral plane instead, and then the mental link was cut off. He slipped on a bracelet on each wrist just as his door burst open. Kasumi entered, demanding he come to the kitchen. Izuku questioned what had gone wrong this time, only to be thrown from the hallway into the living room and then into the kitchen. There, he saw the oven ablaze, with Yaoyorozu using a fire extinguisher. Feeling the need to act, Izuku transformed into his kitsune form, noticing he had gained another tail, bringing his total to 3. His hair turned black and braided, and his body felt more robust. The tails had heads at their ends, which seemed to move independently. He calmed everyone down, absorbing the flames with his outstretched palm. He informed them he would be visiting his family for the weekend and instructed them to only call him back for life-threatening situations, not for burnt dinners. After retrieving a small suitcase, he left to find his car. Later that afternoon, Izuku arrived at the Pale Moon Cafe, where he was approached by a reporter. They recognized him as Omni and bombarded him with questions. He firmly told them to return the next day for answers in a more private setting. When pressed about his goals, he expressed his desire to prevent others from suffering the loss of loved ones. Afterward, he entered the cafe, where he found it mostly empty. He headed upstairs to unpack. Once settled, he was greeted with a hug from Eri and his mother, Kusin. Eri exclaimed her excitement at his return, and Izuku lifted both of them in joy. He explained that he had meetings the next day and planned hero outings each night, promising Eri that they could spend Sunday together. Kusin then suggested they get him ready for work, holding up a dress. Izuku, able to shapeshift in his kitsune form, transformed into a brunette kitsune with one tail for the occasion. After finishing his shift, Izuku ventured out into the public, waiting for any emergencies. As luck would have it, he spotted a man in a peculiar winged suit being pursued by a female masked hero swinging through the air with webs. After a brief interaction with Commissioner Stacy, Izuku successfully got Gwen into UA with his recommendation. He was now driving her to the dorms, referring to her simply as Gwen. She asked about UA, and he explained that while the classes were similar to any other high school, the hero course included training sessions and exercises focused on practical hero skills. Upon arriving at the dorms, he instructed someone to help Gwen find her room while he prepared dinner for everyone. As they entered the dorms, Izuku spotted Kirishima, Kaminari, and Jiro in the living room. Gwen expressed her amazement at the luxury of their living space. "Who's the new girl, Midoriya?" Jiro asked curiously. "She's Gwen Stacy, a new transfer." "Jiro, could you show her to one of the spare rooms?" Izuku replied before heading to his own room. "Sure," Jiro called out as he walked away. Izuku entered his room, which was small yet cozy, and he preferred it over the other rooms he had seen. Most of his classmates had remodeled their spaces, except for Ojiro, who kept his unchanged. Izuku had added a touch of luxury and comfort to his own. After organizing his belongings, he went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The kitchen was primarily made of marble to prevent any accidents, and it was equipped with the essentials, adorned with small chandeliers and decorations for a cheerful atmosphere. As he started cooking, he noticed footsteps nearby and heard a few classmates settling at the counter. He asked without turning around if they needed anything. "I thought you weren't going to cook for us anymore," Yaoyorozu said. "Well, we have a new transfer in our class, so this is a treat for her. But just to clarify, I'm only her partner in fighting villains," Izuku explained, adding ingredients to a pot. "So, what's this new girl like?" Tokoyami inquired as he entered. "Her name is Gwen Stacy, and I can sense her presence growing stronger. She'll tell you more about herself later." "What do you mean by scent?" Yaoyorozu asked, moving closer to the soup. "I've spent a lot of time in my kitsune form, which has heightened my senses. I tracked a few scents just in case something unusual happened," Izuku said, transforming into his kitsune form and using his 3 tails to help carry dishes to the dining room. "Dinner's ready, everyone," he announced, prompting everyone to enter the dining room. Once seated, Gwen took a place to Izuku's right, while Yaoyorozu sat on his left. The dinner consisted of 4 hot pots filled with clams and additional ingredients. "Izuku, did you prepare this yourself?" Gwen asked as she served herself. "Yes, but I hope I made enough for everyone since we have our first training session today," he replied, pouring himself some apple cider. What do you think training will be like? Yaoyorozu wondered as she began to eat. Well, we should receive our quirk results and classifications. We might even develop our own super moves or fighting styles, Izuku said, quickly enjoying his meal. But don't you already have those? Your battles so far have shown you using some sort of super move against the rhino, Gwen remarked, cautiously tasting her food. Anyway, once you're done eating, please drop your dishes in the kitchen for me to clean. We'll head out on patrol around 9, he said, taking his bowl with him. Time skip after dinner 8:30 p.m. After everyone finished dinner, Izuku watched a news segment featuring Jonah Jameson, who was labeling Omni and Spider-Gwen as criminals. He was just waiting for Gwen to get into her suit before they went on patrol. I'm ready, Gwen exclaimed as she dashed into the living room. Do you think we'll encounter a big villain or something? Not likely, but I'm sure we'll stop something significant. Before we leave, I have temporary hero licenses for us from Principal Nizu, Izuku said, handing her the ID with her picture. Let's go, he shouted, transforming into his kitsune form, Kuriyuki, with Spider-Gwen following closely behind. Time skip 10 p.m. After an hour of preventing minor crimes like muggings, they finally stumbled upon a serious situation, a bank robbery. Izuku internally hoped they wouldn't encounter Black Cat as they approached the bank. Upon landing, he asked an officer about the situation. Glad you two are here. We have 3 armed men holding hostages inside, the officer explained. Are there any vantage points or ways we can sneak in? Spider-Gwen asked, perched on a lamppost. We have a vent system, a back door, and an entrance on the roof. The back door is likely being watched, so the vents and roof are the safest options, the officer replied, waiting for their decision. Okay, Spider-Gwen will take the vent, and I'll go through the roof. Officer, only come in if you see a bright blue flash that will signal if we need help. Do you have any private communicators we can borrow? Izuku requested. The officer handed them 2 earpieces and informed everyone of the signal. Once they were ready, they separated. Izuku flew to the roof and phased through it quietly, landing on the 2nd floor where he spotted an armed man. Demented. You heroes just have to ruin everything, the robber shouted, opening fire. Izuku managed to phase through most of the bullets, though one grazed his left forearm. He swiftly moved through the robber, sending him flying out the window towards the police, who quickly apprehended him. Hearing gunshots from downstairs, he flew down the stairs. Omni, we need you now. Spider-Gwen's voice crackled through the earpiece. I hear you, but can you handle the situation while I get the hostages out? He replied. Just do what you have to do. As Izuku rescued the hostages one by one, Spider-Gwen relied on her spider sense to dodge bullets from 2 robbers, one with unusual eyes and another who appeared normal. Frustrated, she clung to the ceiling and used her webbing to disarm the robbers, attempting to kick the normal one but passing right through him. You can't hit the gas, little brat. Gassy yelled as he reached for his gun. Spider-Gwen, clinging to the wall, retorted that she was an arachnid, not a dog. Just then, Omni flew silently behind Gassy, her tails wrapping around him, followed by small blue fireballs. And she's not working alone, Omni remarked quietly as the villain attempted to escape in a cloud of gas. The gas ignited, transforming him back into his human form, unconscious. Spider-Gwen joked about Gassy's lack of chemistry knowledge just as a gunshot rang out. From Izuku's perspective, the moment he heard the bullet, he instinctively moved in front of Spider-Gwen to shield her. As he fell limp in her arms, blood seeped from a wound on his abdomen. He reassured her that he would be all right but urged her to capture the other villain before losing consciousness. Gwen was overwhelmed as Izuku bled out in her arms. Before her anger could take over, she used her webs to staunch the bleeding. Fueled by rage, she ensnared the villain with her webs and hurled him through the window. She quickly ran to Izuku, pinned the villain down with her foot, and delivered a powerful kick. Before the police could approach her, she scooped up Izuku's limp body and swung back to the dorms. In the astral plane, Izuku felt his soul being drawn from his body. He found himself in a surreal place, standing on water that seemed deeper than space itself. Suddenly, Athena appeared before him, welcoming him to the astral plane. Izuku admired the beauty of the place, noting that he never expected to be shot so soon. Athena informed him that there was nothing he could do about it now, but she offered to grant him a better regeneration quirk or a danger-sensing quirk. She suggested that an endurance quirk might suit him best. Izuku pondered how Gwen had managed to avoid bullets for so long, realizing that her spider-like abilities likely played a role. Athena flicked his forehead, explaining that Gwen possessed a danger-sensing aspect to her quirk known as spider sense, which allowed her to detect incoming threats. However, if she didn't recognize something as dangerous, she wouldn't sense it. This could explain her occasional misfortunes. Intrigued, Izuku asked if he could acquire a quirk similar to hers. Athena replied that he could, but he would only have a fraction of her strength. He agreed and leaned in to kiss her as energy enveloped them, gradually merging into his body as he faded back into reality. Back in the real world, Izuku jolted awake and fell from Gwen's grasp. She rushed to catch him, but he instinctively shot out a web to avoid crashing to the ground. Following Athena's mental guidance, he successfully swung to the side of a nearby building, reassuring Gwen that he was okay. Gwen, still clinging to the wall, expressed her concern and curiosity about how he had done that. Izuku promised she would find out soon and suggested they return to the dorms. As he attempted to swing back, he nearly collided with a building while making a turn. Upon returning to the dorms, Gwen went to take a shower, and Izuku followed suit before heading to the downstairs lounge. There, he found Kaminari, who was sipping whiskey and watching the news. Kaminari remarked on their recent bank robbery encounter as Izuku sat beside her and poured himself some sake. Izuku was surprised to learn that Kaminari was the type to drink. She noted that someone taking shots often wanted to forget something. He admitted that he had just been shot twice, which warranted a little forgetfulness. As Kaminari began to feel tipsy, Izuku helped her to her room, teasing her about being a lightweight. Izuku possessed several powers, including adaptive resurrection, which allowed him to gain a quirk related to his cause of death, and kitsune physiology, granting him abilities of a celestial fox. He could create constructs from blood, manipulate his voice, and utilize one for all, a power passed down through 8 individuals before him. He also had a limit break ability to temporarily enhance his powers and spider physiology, which granted him spider-like abilities, albeit at a weaker level. His love interests included Kasumi Bakugo, Yu Takayama, Uraraka Ochako, Momo Yaoyorozu, Sumiko Todoroki, Felicia Hardy, Gwen Stacy, and Daichi Kaminari, with the latter progressing in their relationship. The story highlighted the strange events from a bank robbery to casual drinking, showcasing Gwen's care for Izuku and Daichi's first interaction with him. Unlike previous tales, Izuku would face challenges and eventually learn to stand on his own against formidable foes, though that time was not yet at hand. But bullets were not something that could be avoided by many, and Izuku's instinct kicked in to take the hit rather than push Gwen out of the way. Fortunately, Izumi, known as the symbol of hope, was practically invincible in any armor she wore. The next morning, Izuku woke up in his room, feeling significant pain in his abdomen and left forearm. He sent a quick text to Principal Nizu about his condition and proceeded with his day. After a refreshing shower, he found Gwen waiting outside his room, and he was only wrapped in a towel. She blushed slightly and faced his dorm door, slapping her cheeks to regain her composure before turning back to him. She informed him that she had brought Recovery Girl to check on his injury. Izuku reassured her, stating that his regenerative powers had already healed the wound, leaving only minor aches. After Gwen hurriedly left the hallway, he got dressed in his uniform and prepared some katsudon for breakfast, while most of his classmates were still asleep, except for Gwen and Yaoyorozu, who were awake out of concern and routine, respectively. He thought about the upcoming training session, knowing it would be challenging. Athena reminded him to endure, as there would be times in battle when he would have to fight while injured, but to keep it to a minimum. He nodded in agreement before tidying up his space. When the first bell rang, Aizawa-sensei emerged from his usual sleeping bag, announcing that the class would be training all day with Class 1B. He mentioned that all the teachers would assist, but Izuku would also be involved despite his injury from the previous night's patrol. Izuku insisted he would be fine, but Aizawa explained that Principal Nizu had decided it was best for him to rest. However, he added that if Izuku could convince the principal otherwise, he would not stop him. Once everyone changed into their P uniforms, they gathered in front of the locker rooms, where Izuku would lead them to Gym Gamma. Upon arriving at Gym Gamma, Class 1A found their teachers and Class 1B already present. A blonde student from Class 1B, who seemed to have a few screws loose, taunted them about arriving late. Kasumi quickly defended Izuku, pointing out that the blonde had fallen multiple times. Izuku felt a tick mark grow on his forehead, and his eye began to twitch in irritation. He defended himself, explaining that he had only tripped once while trying to recover from being shot. Aizawa-sensei intervened, stating it was time to train. As everyone organized themselves, Izuku stood to the side, clutching his left arm. Aizawa instructed the students to either train on their own or seek help from the staff. He then informed Izuku that he would be teaching a lesson on fighting styles after lunch. With a nod, the students dispersed to train while Izuku collaborated with Nizu to organize the lesson and practice his own fighting style. He had developed the Foxfang style for his Kitsune form, focusing on deceiving opponents by hiding his skills until the last moment. He practiced with hemokinetic constructs, voice manipulation, and spider physiology to become more accustomed to them. As Izuku prepared to start his lesson, the blonde student from Class 1B spoke up again, questioning how someone injured could teach them to fight. Izuku asked for the student's name, and he introduced himself as Nito Monoma, insisting that Class A should remember it. Izuku noted that Monoma was the copycat who relied on others, and he invited him to stand on the opposite side of the mat. Monoma began to trash talk, boasting about his ability to copy multiple quirks. Izuku addressed the class, explaining that they would be developing their own fighting styles tailored to their quirks. He revealed his bandaged wounds, emphasizing that a true hero should be willing to risk their own safety to save others. All Might interrupted, encouraging Izuku to start the sparring session before the class grew bored. Izuku reminded everyone that a hero is someone who, despite their weaknesses and uncertainties, perseveres and overcomes challenges. He assumed a loose fighting stance. With the signal to begin, Monoma charged at him with a punch. In a split second, Izuku transformed into his Kitsune form, allowing Monoma to phase through him. He grinned, confident in his Foxfang style and its deceptive nature. Monoma taunted him again, questioning the whereabouts of Class A's famous quirks. Izuku decided to show Monoma what he was capable of. He activated 5% of one for all throughout his body, causing a lightning aura to envelop him. Monoma attempted to copy the quirk but quickly fell to the ground, struggling to maintain control as if his body might tear apart. Izuku stood before him, explaining that he had been blessed with multiple quirks, but each required careful balance and timing to use effectively. He helped Monoma back to his feet as he stopped trying to copy one for all. This was why one couldn't rely on others all the time. It was essential to train oneself first. Izuku turned to the rest of the class, tossing Monoma to Class B. He reminded everyone that the real world was harsh, filled with deceit and danger. Developing their own unique styles would catch opponents off guard, but since they would be working together, they should help each other adapt their styles. He mentioned that he would be meditating in the middle of the gym if anyone needed him. As the students left with their friends, Gwen and Sumiko approached him. Gwen called out for Izuku, asking for help. He agreed but inquired about the type of moves they were focusing on. Gwen explained she was working on close combat techniques, while Sumiko aimed to keep opponents at a distance with her ice quirk. Izuku decided to assist Gwen first, leading her to an empty mat in the gym. He instructed her to try to catch him with her webs while he dodged. As Gwen aimed a web at him, Izuku used his new spider sense to avoid it. Gwen continued to shoot webs, but they ended up hitting other students instead. Seizing the moment, Izuku got behind her and pinned her down. He advised her to be more creative and less predictable in her attacks, demonstrating how to keep her opponents guessing. He leaped into the air, shooting 2 webs at her. Although she dodged, he pulled himself toward her and landed a kick, teasing her about not seeing it coming. He explained that while her spider sense could detect immediate danger, speed could render it ineffective against subsequent attacks. The key was to let instincts take over, which could be challenging during training. He encouraged her to develop techniques that stemmed from the same move, like transitioning a web shot into a swing. Izuku then approached Sumiko, who was amusing herself by creating snowflakes in her hand. He apologized for the delay and asked what kind of style or move she was considering. Sumiko expressed her desire for both defensive and offensive moves, as she was unsure about a fighting style. Izuku transformed into his kitsune form and suggested an attack to keep enemies at bay. He took a few steps back and called out, "Flaming spiral." A spiral of flames surrounded him before dissipating. He encouraged her to try a similar move but with ice, and to create new techniques based on it. After some time, Izuku resumed meditating in the air, waiting for class to end. As the hour approached, the students gathered in UA's stadium-like area. Izuku stood on stage with his teachers and superiors, while the students lined up in front of them. He addressed the class, stating they were there to assess their training progress. He reassured them not to worry about how others performed, as the goal was to identify flaws and improve fighting styles. He invited anyone to spar with him first. Before anyone could volunteer, Monoma stepped into the arena, eager for a rematch. He took a confident stance, and Izuku responded with an Aikido stance as Monoma charged. This time, instead of phasing through, Izuku stepped forward and executed a punch that sent Monoma into the air. Using his blood technique, he created a dull blade, feeling slightly lightheaded, but his kitsune regeneration quickly remedied that. Monoma, undeterred, taunted Izuku as he got back up. Izuku rushed at him, sliding to sweep his feet with the blade. After Monoma fell, Izuku placed his foot on his back, the blade hovering near his head, and asked if he yielded. Monoma agreed, and Izuku released him, praising his progress while emphasizing the importance of recognizing an opponent's potential moves. Gwen interrupted, questioning why Izuku was teaching them. He explained that with multiple quirks, he was better suited to test them, as his abilities were less predictable. Cementos repaired the arena, and Izuku called for the next challenger. Yaoyorozu stepped forward, proposing a deal. If she won, he would be her personal butler for a week. If he won, she would clean 1A's dorm. After some thought, Izuku accepted the terms. Yaoyorozu created a metal staff and launched a nesting doll at him. As it exploded, smoke enveloped the area. Using his voice manipulation, Izuku whispered, "Wind whistle," dispersing the smoke. He spotted her and, before she could react, pinned her down, claiming victory. After allowing her to recover, he announced he had enough energy for one more spar. Kasumi stepped forward, ready to be his opponent. "Don't underestimate me. Last time was just a fluke, and you caught me off guard." The response was acknowledged, but a hero should take every advantage they can get. As this was the last spar, the plan was to use the quirk that had the most experience behind it, adopting a unique fighting stance that some would describe as unconventional. The opponent, not one to back down, took a street fighting stance, fists poised for action. With determination, she charged forward, her right hand pulled back, ready to strike. As she approached, she attempted a right hook, but the arm was swiftly caught and redirected, using her momentum to throw her off balance. Just before she hit the ground, she propelled herself into the air with a burst of explosions. Taking on a kitsune form, the excitement was palpable, signaling that it was time for some fun. Finally getting serious, the opponent welcomed the challenge, conjuring a small circle of fire in her hands. With a fierce determination, she unleashed a stream of flames aimed directly at the kitsune. In response, the three tails of the kitsune form moved with agility, consuming the fire as they advanced toward her. Before she could react, the tails ensnared her, lifting her a meter into the air. The playful taunt followed, questioning what she would do next. The answer was simple: a real villain might have acted differently, but the intention was to win the spar instead. With that, the opponent was released, and she walked back to join the rest of the class, while the kitsune stood ready in the center of the arena, anticipating the next challenge. The call for a surprise was made, and in an instant, All Might appeared in his hero form, urging the young hero to use full power, as this battle would determine readiness for heroism. The response was casual, but determination was evident. Returning to a normal form, the young hero moved to the opposite side of the arena, ready to start. In an instant, a rush of energy propelled forward, surrounded by a green cowl of lightning, reaching All Might in a flash. However, the seasoned hero was quicker, evading the attack and countering with an elbow strike that sent the young hero crashing against the wall of the stadium. Instead of rising immediately, a blinding light filled the vision. A familiar presence appeared, casually introducing herself and offering a new quirk, asking if there were any requests. Each day held surprises, and it was essential to embrace them, whether they brought sorrow or joy. This mindset would open new avenues in the heart, welcoming new friendships and celebrating shared humanity. After the training session, things had been relatively calm, aside from the chaos caused by combining the dorms of Class 1A and Class 1B. Training continued, focusing on the fusion of ghoul physiology with the hemokinetic construct quirk, while healing took place whenever possible. Class B had adjusted well, except for one student, who was often seen as eccentric or troubled. The day of the heroics course arrived, and the class was preparing for a trip to USJ, not the amusement park but a training facility. As the class president, there was a responsibility to ensure everything was in order. Aizawa, the teacher, inquired if more equipment was needed. The response was confident, emphasizing the preference for self-made enhancements due to the unique nature of the adaptive resurrection quirk. With the class gathered, Aizawa instructed everyone to board the bus for a half-hour journey. Once seated, the young hero found himself between two classmates, both of whom showed great potential as future heroes. Questions arose about the activities planned for USJ, with expectations leaning toward disaster and rescue practice, all aimed at preparing for hero duties. As the conversation flowed, curiosity sparked about the relationship with All Might, given the strength of the young hero's quirk. The answer was straightforward. All Might had been an inspiration since childhood, having helped capture a villain made entirely of sludge, an experience that nearly cost a life but ultimately led to victory. After that, All Might was going to hand him over to the police, but the villain escaped along the way, so I defeated it again. If anyone wanted to know more about that villain, a few news stations filmed it. Yaoyorozu shifted a bit closer and expressed her thoughts on the matter, wondering why reporters hadn't pieced the puzzle together sooner. I explained that some people can't see what's right in front of them, but I was sure a few dozen had figured it out before I stopped the bank robbery involving Black Cat. Aizawa-sensei reminded us that we would be arriving at USJ soon and instructed everyone to ensure they had everything ready. He then turned to me with a serious expression, telling me to phase through the roof and check ahead for any signs of trouble. I responded with a determined, "Yes, sir," before transforming into my kitsune form and utilizing my yokai abilities. Once I phased through the roof, I flew around the USJ building a few times, confirming that everything was safe for now. When everyone else arrived at USJ, the doors were opened by a man in an astronaut-like hero suit 13, the pro hero. He led everyone into the building, accompanied by Aizawa-sensei and Vlad King. 13 introduced himself, explaining that he specialized in rescue missions and natural disasters. He moved aside to reveal more of USJ, explaining that it was where we would practice rescue and disaster missions. Before we began, he discussed quirks, mentioning that his quirk was called Black Hole, which could save countless people but also had the potential to be deadly. Just then, I activated my 1-for-all, 5% full cowl and zoomed past my sensei, shouting about an emergency. Before 13 and Aizawa-sensei could respond, a black and purple portal opened in the middle of USJ, and several villains emerged. One villain, with light blue hair and hands all over his body, began to shout to the world. Just as he was about to finish, I appeared out of nowhere and kicked him. I landed in the midst of the villains, quickly assessing that they lacked experience but had numbers on their side. I taunted them, confident that they couldn't defeat me. Amid the protests from the nameless villains, the hand-covered guy shouted back, vowing to take revenge. My classmates found humor in his threat. I challenged him, doubting he could follow through. With a surge of power, I dodged the villains and retaliated, sending them flying. The hand-covered villain called for Kurogiri to gather the rest as the portal vanished. Fueled by adrenaline, I transformed into my kitsune form and rushed to Mai. classmates, warning the villains that they would regret hurting them. As I landed in front of my peers, the portal reformed behind them, and a voice emerged, taunting me. Before I could react, my classmates attempted to attack, but their efforts were redirected back at them. Calculating my next move, I focused on the pieces of metal I had noticed and prepared to grab them. I leaped while my tails surged toward the metal, crashing into it and causing it to heat up before I seized it and began to claw at it. Kurogiri surrounded everyone in his portal, transporting all the students while leaving 13, Lad King, and Aizawa-sensei to face the other villains. When I emerged from the portal, I found myself in the middle of water, with several villains swimming toward me. They struck at me, aiming for my vitals, but after their attack, I began to glow green. My body reformed and lengthened, transforming into a green dragon. As the glow faded, a perfect clone of me appeared beside me. Both of us smirked before we swam out of the water and flew above it, the clone disappearing as I landed on a yacht adorned with prop decorations. Tsuyu and Shiozaki caught their breath near the edge. Tsuyu asked if I was all right, adjusting her goggles. I assured them I was fine and inquired if they needed healing. They both shook their heads and stood upright. Shiozaki asked for the plan. I explained that I could use my new quirk to create a whirlpool while she captured the villains with her vines, and Tsuyu could use her tongue to help us escape. Tsuyu noted that the Villain League hadn't planned for us to split up, suggesting that if they had, they would have sent me to the fire zone alone. I agreed and began to reform, changing back to a smaller version of my dragon form. It was time to get started. Find out what happens next in the next chapter of Kami's Gift. While he could heal quickly, to the point where it seemed his blood was never depleted, Izuku possessed remarkable abilities. His dragon physiology allowed him to transform into a Western dragon, granting him the power to change size, unleash elemental breaths, fly, and boast nearly impenetrable scales. His strength was enough to crush steel bars with ease. Izuku also had the ability to create clones of himself. These clones shared his injuries and stamina but could think independently and operate at a distance from him. Each clone could even utilize a different quirk than the original. The plan was set, and Izuku, in his newly acquired dragon form, waited for Shiozaki and Azui to prepare. Azui announced they were ready, positioning herself to jump. Izuku nodded and dove into the water, wings folded against his body, while generating 2 more clones. As they circled a small group of villains in the water, a whirlpool formed, drawing the villains into its center. Beneath the surface, vines began to grow, ready to ensnare them. As the vines sprouted and captured the villains caught in the whirlpool, Izuku used his elemental breath to freeze their lower bodies. He then noticed Azui and Shiozaki leaping over the water as his clones were dispelled. He flew toward the center of USJ. Upon gathering at the center, they saw Aizawa and Vlad battling villains while the Hanzigai and Kurogiri lingered nearby. Azui suggested they help their classmates in the other zones. After assessing the situation, Izuku proposed they split up. He explained that he could create clones using each of his quirks, sending 2 to each zone while the 2 girls would go to another zone and regroup later. He created 6 clones and noted that Sumiko and Kasumi were heading toward the plaza, leaving 4 zones to cover. With that, he dashed toward the plaza, establishing a mental link with Athena. He requested energy for himself and his clones to defeat the villains and save everyone. She agreed, asking him to entertain her with his fighting. In the downpour zone, Tsuyu and Ibara had to break in through a sealed entrance. Once inside, they quickly defeated the villains while rescuing Ojiro, Mina, and Yuga. Meanwhile, Kuriyuki flew into the inflammation zone, which was engulfed in flames. She spotted Ida running around, kicking villains while Gwen and Achiko used their quirks to fight. Drawing the attention of the villains, Kuriyuki playfully teased them before splitting into 5 clones, allowing them to take down multiple villains simultaneously. Miku, with her pigtails bouncing, made her way to the landslide zone, where she found it completely frozen over. Sumiko approached her, accompanied by Fumikage, Rikido, and Koji. Sumiko inquired if Izuku had sent Miku with a new quirk. Miku nervously acknowledged the ice but soon returned to her bubbly self as she walked alongside Sumiko. In the ruin zone, Kaneki and Deku were sent together to keep each other in check. Upon arrival, they witnessed Kasumi blasting villains while Hanta, Ijiro, and Itsuka were gathered near the plaza. Excitedly, they declared their intention to join the fight for fun. In the mountain zone, Drago and Spider-Man arrived to find Momo, Kyoka, Daichi, and Mizo cornered by villains. Spider-Man announced his presence before kicking a villain and using his webs to restrain others, while Drago utilized his elemental breath to freeze them. They quickly coordinated their efforts, with Drago offering to carry the students back to the plaza. After about half an hour of intense fighting, which Izuku found exhilarating, his clones informed him via their mental link that they had regrouped near the entrance. Apologizing to his teammates, he activated a 5% full cowl and gathered his teachers before heading to the plaza, where he encountered 21 students who looked as if they had just completed a sparring session with him, along with another 18 students who appeared out of nowhere. Izuku felt the urgency as Gwen shook him by his collar, demanding to know his plan. He assured her he had won, explaining that most of the villains were defeated, and that the others needed to finish off the remaining threats while he healed Aizawa-sensei and Vlad. He expressed his determination to take down Hanzi himself. Kasumi eagerly rushed into battle, followed closely by Sumiko and Minoma. Izuku instructed Ida and Daichi to reach out to the UA staff for assistance while he tended to his teacher's injuries. The rest of the group could either wait or join the fight. Once he finished healing, he joined the fray, summoning 5 clones to assist him. With Kitsune active, he unleashed a powerful attack called Unison Barrage, sending streams of fire toward the villains. Miku's scream distracted many of the enemies, while Draco unleashed lightning bolts, Kaneki struck with his Kagun, and Deku created strong gusts of wind that fueled Izuku's flames. After a fierce battle, only 2 villains remained, Kurogyri and Hanzi. As Izuku dispelled his clones, he taunted the villains about their dwindling numbers. Hanzi ordered Kurogyri to unleash Numu, a massive creature with a menacing appearance. Izuku noted the creature's intimidating size from a distance. As the creature emerged, Izuku quickly created clones to ensure Kasumi and Kirishima were safe while he focused on Sumiko. The group huddled together, apprehensive about the challenge ahead. Izuku rallied them, encouraging them to stay put until the professionals arrived, but Gwen insisted on helping him. Yaoyorozu supported her, urging Izuku not to face the threat alone. Izuku, however, felt a deep sense of responsibility. He expressed his desire to fight alone, wanting to protect his friends from harm. Before they could stop him, he created clones of Miku and Draco to guard them and stepped forward to confront the villains. He addressed Kurogyri and Shigaraki directly, acknowledging their presence. Shigaraki confirmed Izuku would serve as a decoy until help arrived. Izuku, taking on his pro-hero persona as Omni, prepared to engage. When he attacked, Numa suddenly appeared, striking both him and his clone with immense force, sending them crashing through the roof. As they descended, Izuku felt a transformation occurring. His clone became more muscular, adorned with horns and wings, while Izuku himself shifted into a white-haired girl in a flowing dress. As they landed, Draco and Miku rushed to protect them from Numu. Miku suggested it was time for Plan B, and they rose to their feet. With renewed determination, Izuku summoned 5 more clones, each taking on the remaining quirks. They formed a line, and Shigaraki mocked them, unaware of what was about to unfold. The clones grabbed their necklaces, and in unison, they declared the start of their next strategy, Limit Break. Each clone glowed with their unique colors, revealing powerful new forms as they prepared for the battle ahead. As the Numu charged forward, Draco seized its right arm while Daisuke grabbed its left, and Angelica held its head steady. They all shouted in unison, urging their allies to prepare for the attack. Kuriyuki was the first to act, her tails and hands converging to form a single white fireball, which transformed into a stream of white fire aimed directly at the Numu's brain. Flaming neutralization, she declared. Kaneki followed suit, utilizing a combined version of his Kagun to strike at the Numu's vulnerable spot. Relentless strike, he exclaimed as he unleashed his assault. Spider-Man swung above the Numu, using his webs to immobilize its legs. Finally, Deku activated another full cowl. His veins glowed, green lightning crackled around him, and energy arced off his body. He leaped toward the Numu with such speed that onlookers could have sworn he teleported. He unleashed a flurry of attacks against the Numu's entire body. "Universal calamity," he shouted, his determination evident. Once their combined efforts concluded, the Numu's head was completely destroyed, halting any further aggression. However, the remaining clones glowed and merged back into the original Izuku. "No!" Shigaraki cried, clutching his hand. "Kurogyri! Bring in the other Numu!" Kurogyri expanded, allowing 3 more Numu to enter the USJ. The doors slammed open as Shigaraki's hand shot forward. "Have no fear, for we are here," All Might proclaimed, attempting to punch the massive Numu. To his shock, the creature appeared entirely unfazed by the attack. "Sensei, target the brain," Izuku urged, watching as All Might continued to strike without effect. Realizing that All Might couldn't destroy the brain quickly enough, the Numu retaliated, sending All Might staggering back. Izuku glanced at his classmates, noting their fearful expressions. In a moment of instinct, he grasped his necklace and activated Limit Break. This time, he felt a surge of power without any visible change. Harnessing one for all, he leaped toward the massive Numu, cupping his hands together as blue flames engulfed its head. The flames obliterated the Numu's head, but he was soon lifted by a winged Numu. "I've had enough," he shouted, unleashing a torrent of fire toward the Numu's underside, amplifying his voice with manipulation. The creature released him as he sprouted green wings, soaring above it while unleashing a fierce battle cry. Suddenly, a Numu wielding a chainsaw and a massive sword tackled him, sending him crashing to the ground. Upon impact, he summoned his Kagun, using it to throw the creature off before webbing it to the ground and swiftly severing its head. Exhausted after defeating the last Numu, Izuku collapsed, hearing the remaining villains retreat through a portal. Then Athena appeared, a gentle smile on her face. "Good job, Aizu," she said, closing his eyelids with her fingers. "Rest easy, my little hero." As Izuku regained consciousness, pain coursed through his body as he stared at a bland, white ceiling. Attempting to sit up, he felt his muscles strain, but he managed to rise in the hospital bed. Looking around, he realized it was late at night, and only he and a sleeping Sumiko were in the room. Confusion washed over him. Why was she there? More pressing was the fact that both his arms and abdomen were wrapped in bandages. He nudged Sumiko awake, but she remained comfortably settled on his legs. After nudging her again, she groaned in annoyance before a woman with blonde hair appeared, wearing a white robe and radiant wings behind her. "Hello, Aizu," she greeted with a small smile, standing before him. "My name is Nike, Goddess of Victory." The young hero stood there, dumbfounded, as he processed her words. After shaking her head, she continued, explaining that his last limit break had caused Kami to split into multiple goddesses around the world. Nike was one of those aspects, and she reassured him that he would retain all his powers while she accompanied him until another goddess took her place. As the information settled in, he hesitantly asked if the split would change anything else. Nike explained that he would likely gain a new power based on the preferences of the goddess accompanying him. She illustrated her point by mentioning how different goddesses would offer different abilities. Athena might grant knowledge, while another might provide a more dangerous power. After a moment of contemplation, he mumbled about the new possibilities, which stirred his friend Sumiko from her sleep. She rubbed her eyes and hugged him tightly, expressing her worry. Despite the pain he felt, he returned the embrace, apologizing for causing her distress. He suggested they talk later, perhaps with more friends around to ease the explanation. The next morning, after being released from the hospital, he arrived at UA's first-year hero course dormitory, where many awaited his return. The smell of something burning wafted from the kitchen, and he surveyed the chaotic living room, wondering if this was the result of his absence. Yaoyorozu was the first to speak, expressing concern for him. He placed a finger over her mouth to quiet her and headed to the kitchen, creating 2 clones to assist him. Within minutes, he prepared 40 bowls of ramen for everyone. He suggested they enjoy brunch together and carefully made his way to the dining room, feeling a bit drained from using his clones. As everyone sat down, they began to eat, with Class 1A savoring their ramen while Class 1B devoured theirs quickly. Sumiko was the first to break the silence, asking what he planned to do during the week before classes resumed. He mentioned a small patrol with Gwen and possibly participating in a charity event around town. Kasumi, pointing her chopsticks at him, warned him not to slack off on training just because he had gained new powers. The others looked at him curiously, while Gwen simply helped herself to seconds. He reassured them that he would continue training but hinted at a big debut as an official hero soon, suggesting they save the details for the upcoming sports festival. After about 20 minutes of cooking and cleaning, they gathered in the living room, where someone turned on the news. The report detailed a recent attack by a group of villains known as the League of Villains at USJ, where only a few students were injured, and All Might had saved the day alongside other heroes. As the news anchor discussed the incident, he reflected on how All Might received all the credit, unaware of the true extent of the situation or his own contributions. Gwen, sitting on the armrest of his chair, asked if he didn't want some recognition for his efforts. He acknowledged the desire for anonymity, explaining that it allowed him to spend more time with her. Just then, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. When he opened it, he was surprised to see Captain Marvel and Eri, who looked upset. Captain Marvel greeted him warmly and kissed his forehead, causing him to rub the spot in confusion. She explained that she had both good and bad news. He braced himself and chose to hear the bad news first. With a serious tone, she informed him that his mother had passed away, having been attacked by villains while he was in the hospital. The shock left him speechless. She quickly followed up with the good news, revealing that Eri had been rescued by his cousin Sora and that she would be teaching his class alongside All Might for a while. However, she insisted that he pack up and come home with her while he wasn't in school. His mind raced as he processed the news, disbelief washing over him. The story would continue next time on Cammy's Gift. The next few chapters would serve as filler due to an upcoming plane trip. The protagonist considered whether to continue teasing Gwen, while Sumiko remained the main love interest, with others on the side. Captain Marvel expressed her frustration as the protagonist rushed out with a suitcase in one hand and a phone in the other. She felt guilty for not being able to respond to the UA staff trying to reach her. Captain Marvel, still active in her hero role at 63, was a source of inspiration. Upon arriving at a private estate belonging to the protagonist's family, she greeted Soba-san and asked if she could host a concert that weekend. Soba-san questioned the need for such attention, suggesting that public appearances could wait until the protagonist had her hero license. The protagonist clarified that she already had her license and wanted to help civilians through charity and morale-boosting efforts rather than just fighting villains. Soba-san agreed to a sparring match first, promising that if the protagonist won, she could hold the concert, but if Soba-san won, she would get to test a new gadget on her. The protagonist shifted into her one-for-all form, ready for the challenge. As they charged at each other, the protagonist attempted to punch Captain Marvel, who countered with a powerful blow that sent her crashing to the ground. Undeterred, the protagonist activated her ghoul physiology quirk, sprouting a tentacle-like appendage to strike back. Despite her efforts, Captain Marvel caught the appendage but was soon wrapped up by additional tentacles, which sent her crashing into the ground. With a few tears in her suit, Captain Marvel praised the protagonist's effort but reminded her that she still had much to learn. The protagonist, refusing to give up, activated her Kitsune physiology quirk and prepared for another attack. Captain Marvel warned her about the stress she was putting on her body, but the protagonist was determined to keep fighting. The battle escalated as Captain Marvel transformed, her hair igniting in flames as she unleashed a powerful photon blast, sending the protagonist flying. After a time skip, the protagonist found herself in bed, disoriented and confused. Captain Marvel informed her that she had lost the sparring match. Realizing she was in her Kitsune form with a collar and a bell, the protagonist felt embarrassed. Soba-san explained that she needed to test a new quirk manipulator and thought the protagonist would be the perfect subject due to her variety of quirks. After handing her a stack of clothes, Soba-san instructed her to get dressed and promised to discuss the concert after dinner. The protagonist donned a shrine maiden outfit, feeling a mix of emotions as she prepared for the evening ahead. As her tails became a challenge with the skirt lifting at the back, she skillfully maneuvered them through a small hole she created, merging them into one large, fluffy tail. She then headed to the kitchen to prepare a fish platter, featuring everything from sushi to smoked salmon. Dinner was ready, and she announced it cheerfully as she placed the meal on the table, her little bell jingling with nearly every movement. Once Carol and Eri settled at the spacious table, the three began to eat and chat simultaneously. Carol inquired if the bell was truly necessary, to which she replied that while it wasn't essential, it helped her keep track of Kuriyuki and made her even more adorable. Carol then set 3 conditions for Kuriyuki to perform at the concert. Excitement lit up Kuriyuki's ears as she listened. The first condition was to start training with Carol and her cousins the following Monday. The second was to keep her collar on until Carol deemed it appropriate to remove it. The third condition was that she would take over the family company after winning the sports festival. Kuriyuki groaned, questioning how Carol could be so sure she would win the sports festival. Carol explained that training with multiple pro heroes, who happened to be her family, was the key. She added that if Kuriyuki wanted to hire heroes outside the family, that would be acceptable as long as they could hold their own. As Kuriyuki considered hiring Gwen, she knew that only time would tell if that would be possible. Suddenly, Carol's voice broke through her thoughts, insisting that she couldn't end the chapter there. She asked if Kuriyuki had any new powers to share. Out of nowhere, Nike, the goddess of victory, appeared. She announced that she could answer that question, just as Kuriyuki tumbled out of her chair and landed on her tail. Nike explained that while Kuriyuki was sleeping, she had granted her an energy transference ability similar to Carol's. Just as quickly as she appeared, Nike vanished, leaving Eri to continue petting her older sister's tail. Chapter end. If you fall behind, run faster. Never give up, never surrender, and rise up against the odds. Jesse Jackson. Last we saw Kuriyuki, originally known as Izuku, she had received permission to throw a concert on Saturday before returning to UA. Currently, she was busy preparing for the concert near the Kiyoshi Ward shopping mall. Her training was moderate compared to some methods, while Captain Marvel and many of Kuriyuki's cousins were experimenting with the quirk manipulator. At this point, Kuriyuki's height had been reduced to 4 feet 8 inches, and her appearance had changed significantly, much to the surprise of her family. On a more important note, the concert was sold out 2 days prior, with 1,000 attendees and 3 lucky guests for the 100th, 500th, and 1,000th tickets. Kuriyuki thought about her plans for the evening, which included choreography practice, singing practice, and making 3 phone calls. She flew around, admiring the stage she had created. After practicing and consuming a lot of coffee, Izuku was seen making phone calls to the lucky winners for their song requests. Interestingly, he was finally in his normal form as Izuku Midoriya. He reflected on the group of winners, noting that 2 were UA students and 1 was a transfer student, feeling fortunate for them. After a restful night, Izuku woke up and dressed in a simple black shirt and jeans before going through his morning routine and rushing to the Kiyoshi Mall, where a few people were already gathering for the concert. Without drawing too much attention, he slipped backstage, where he saw Carol Danvers and Wanda Maximoff, one of his many cousins. Wanda urged Izuku to hurry, reminding him that they had only half an hour before the show started. She helped him change into a new outfit, which included a blue shirt and a gray vest. Carol advised him to stay composed on stage, and Izuku tested his voice manipulation while securing a microphone around his ear. As the sun began to set, Izuku stepped onto the stage. He greeted the crowd enthusiastically, introducing himself as Omni and announcing his official debut as a pro hero. He was excited to start the concert with a song titled, "The Champion." With a snap of his fingers, he transformed into a female version of himself, maintaining the same outfit but with a slightly shorter stature and longer hair. As the first song concluded, Izuku called for the first winner, Hansuki Hikaru, to join him on stage. Hansuki, with dark blonde hair and a casual outfit, received a warm welcome from the audience. He introduced the next song, "Why Worry?" while Izuku created a few clones to assist with the performance. After Hansuki finished, Izuku acknowledged him and invited Kira Masubi to the stage. Kira, with striking white eyes and long pink hair, was about the same height as Izuku. She expressed her excitement to perform Somebody to You, and Izuku nodded in agreement. Once Kira finished her performance, Izuku thanked her before calling up the final guest, Tempi Ru. Tempi, an old friend of Izuku, had freckles and frizzy black hair with a blue streak. She greeted Izuku warmly and announced that she would be singing Like I'm Gonna Lose You for the audience. Izuku smiled as he enjoyed the music, feeling a sense of camaraderie with Tempi, who winked at him before skipping off stage to join the other winners. He knew it was time for his next performance, a song he called Odd Future. After the concert ended, Izuku made his way backstage and sank into a chair, feeling the fatigue wash over him as his clones dispelled. Meanwhile, Carol and Wanda busily packed up some smaller items. Just then, 3 lucky guests arrived backstage, looking around with a hint of disappointment at the simplicity of the surroundings. Izuku stood up, panting slightly. He admitted that the concert had taken more out of him than he had anticipated. Tempi approached him, placing a gentle hand on his chest and guiding him back to the chair. She expressed her happiness at seeing him again, her cheeks flushing a light pink as she played with her frizzy hair. Hansuki leaned against a table, brushing his dirty blonde hair back as he remarked on how long it had been since they had all sat down together. He mentioned that they would have plenty of time to catch up once UA resumed. Izuku acknowledged that they were all headed to UA and accepted a bottle of water thrown his way by Hansuki. Kira seemed a bit out of place, distracted by her phone. He apologized to her, realizing she might not recognize him in his current form. When he transformed into his first kitsune form, Kira's eyes widened in recognition, and she exclaimed in surprise, causing Izuku to cover his fox ears in annoyance before reverting back. He mumbled about how loud she was, noting the sensitivity of his fox ears, while Kira blushed in embarrassment. She apologized, her cheeks still slightly pink. Izuku reassured her that it was fine and asked if they had any questions or wanted something, suggesting they could hang out until the cleanup was done. Hansuki, feeling a bit commanding, asked Izuku to explain how he knew them. Izuku shared that he had saved Masubi from a bully in their childhood, had worked on a project with Ruchan in junior high, and had known Hansuki since they were kids due to their family's closeness before his mother passed away. He discarded the empty water bottle after his explanation. Kira expressed her condolences, but Izuku gently lifted her chin, encouraging her not to dwell on the past. He shared that his mother had fought valiantly against a villain and would have wanted everyone to look forward to the future. A single tear slipped from his eye as he spoke. Suddenly, Izuku's phone alerted him to a nearby villain attack. Before the others could react, he activated One for All and dashed toward the scene, discovering a small jewelry store robbery in progress. Thugs wearing masks resembling heroes like All Might and Endeavor were causing trouble. Izuku joked about one of the thugs looking like All Might just as a plasma ball was shot at him. He caught it, absorbing the energy before delivering a swift roundhouse kick to the thug. He taunted them, insisting they would need to try harder. As the remaining thugs reached for weapons, Izuku quickly punched one in the gut and threw another into the third. One thug cursed at him, claiming their boss would retaliate. Just then, a car crashed into the jewelry store, driven by a man in a purple and orange suit with clown makeup and green hair. He challenged Izuku, pulling out the rocket launcher. Before the situation escalated, a beam of red energy shot from a distance, striking the rocket and causing a non-lethal explosion. Hansuki stood confidently with a makeshift rifle, his hair blown into his face from the blast. Izuku thanked him for the timely save and switched to his angel physiology quirk, soaring toward the crazed man. He threw him into the mall, where 2 giant humanoid golems made of concrete pinned him down. Izuku returned to his normal form as police officers arrived, asking for his hero license while taking the villains into custody. He apologized to the shop owner for the chaos and created clones to assist with the cleanup. Once the damage was addressed, he sat at a table with the 3 concert winners. He explained that using his clones took a toll on him just as a little girl approached. He knelt down to her level, asking what she needed. She thanked him for saving everyone, and he smiled, standing up to greet the woman accompanying her. He reassured them that it was all part of being a hero. He wished everyone a nice day and bowed before walking back to his small group, while the mother and daughter walked away. Tempi teased that it was cute as Izuku sat down timidly, observing his clones working on repairing the jewelry store. He mentioned that such encounters had been happening quite frequently lately, just as a waitress emerged from the small cafe with strawberry milkshakes for them. He expressed his gratitude, noting that it wasn't necessary. The waitress, a brunette who looked freshly out of high school, smiled and told him not to be so humble. She then returned to the store to chat with her coworkers. Hansuki, arms crossed, remarked on Izuku's newfound popularity while the two girls enjoyed their milkshakes. Unable to resist, he dug into his own as Izuku placed a small black choker around his neck. Hansuki inquired about its purpose, and Izuku explained that it was part of a deal that helped him manage his quirks better for training. Transforming into his kitsune form, Izuku's hair turned black and flowed down to her waist, and she sprouted a fluffy tail. Her outfit morphed into that of a shrine maiden, with the choker becoming black lace tied with a bow, complemented by a bell. Tempi squealed in delight at the sight of the fluffy tail, eagerly petting it until Kuriyuki playfully swung her tail, causing Tempi to hang from it. After a moment of playful banter, Kuriyuki floated back down to enjoy her milkshake, while Kira giggled at the scene. Curious, Kira asked if something was wrong, prompting Kuriyuki to wipe a bit of milkshake from her mouth. Kira then reminded her that they had intended to discuss something important. Kuriyuki, realizing she had forgotten, pushed her milkshake glass toward the center of the table and, with a sly smile, proposed a deal since they were all going to you. She explained that after the sports festival, she would be taking over her family's hero agency, specifically the Japanese branch, and wanted to offer a select few students the opportunity to intern with her. After a brief pause for consideration, Hansuki was the first to agree, finding the idea of working with a friend more appealing than with a random hero. Tempi echoed his sentiment, noting that it would be less awkward than being paired with a stingy hero. Kira, however, expressed concern about the potential dangers, recalling how Kuriyuki had faced a villain previously. Kuriyuki reassured her that heroes work together to mitigate risks and save more people. Kira ultimately agreed, motivated by the desire to keep others safe. Kuriyuki then stood up, her clones dispersing in the distance, and mentioned she had to prepare dinner, inviting them to stop by later if they wanted to talk. After the concert, Izuku's training intensified as he focused solely on Carol and Eri, balancing rigorous training with their needs. Carol pushed him hard, making him fly around the world in his kitsune form before sparring with her, so he knew it was wise not to irritate her. With UA classes resuming and the sports festival approaching, Izuku found himself napping in homeroom while his loud classmates chatted. Carol burst into the classroom in her hero suit, announcing she would be their teacher alongside Aizawa, who was currently in the hospital. The class settled down, but Izuku remained asleep. Momo quietly asked if she should wake him, to which Carol had a different idea. Using her phone, she activated a custom app that transformed Izuku into his kitsune form, complete with a girl's UA uniform that had a hole for her tail. Encouraged by Carol, Kasumi eagerly pulled on Kuriyuki's tail, prompting her to wake up in surprise and fly to the ceiling. She expressed her discomfort, and Carol swooped in to gently return her to her seat. With everyone's attention now focused, Carol announced that the week would be dedicated to training for the sports festival, igniting cheers from the class. Izuku silently wished he hadn't come to school, as most of his classmates took Carol's threat lightly. But throughout the week, everyone endured a challenging training regimen. Izuku pushed himself by using every quirk simultaneously with the help of clones, while Achiko practiced making objects float until she felt unwell, and Tenya ran until his engines overheated, only to repeat the process. 1 week later, after the intense training, the sports festival had finally arrived, and Class 1A was buzzing with excitement. Dressed in their P uniforms, they entered the massive stadium that UA had prepared. Daichi's excitement was evident as she exclaimed how cool everything was. Mina echoed her enthusiasm, noting how UA had gone all out for the event. Izuku, standing at the back of their group, reminded them to maintain a professional demeanor, prompting everyone to straighten up as they made their way to their designated area. As all of UA's first-year classes gathered, Midnight took the stage in her hero suit. She welcomed everyone to UA's sports festival, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Midnight introduced the first-year representative, Izuku Midoriya, who walked up to the stage without his choker. He greeted the audience calmly, identifying himself as Izuku Midoriya, or Omni as some knew him. He confidently declared his intention to win, pausing dramatically before summoning clones using all of his quirks, causing laughter to ripple through the crowd. He playfully remarked on their reactions, enjoying the moment. Midnight, still on stage, asked if he had any final words before the first event. Izuku confidently stated that he would win and that anyone hoping to defeat him would need to give it their all, as half-hearted attempts would not succeed. With that, his clones disintegrated, and he jumped off the stage, rejoining Class 1A. Midnight announced that the first event would be an obstacle course and instructed the students to get ready. The first-year classes, excluding the business course, gathered at the entrance, where it became clear that if everyone rushed in at once, they would become trapped. Thinking logically, Kasumi, Sumiko, and Izuku stepped aside to prepare themselves to boost over the gate. Present Mick's voice boomed from the speakers, calling for everyone to get ready before shouting for them to go. Most students rushed toward the entrance, but they quickly became crowded, allowing only a few to enter the course at a time. Meanwhile, Kasumi soared over the entrance, propelled by her explosions, and Sumiko launched herself with a pillar of ice, sliding forward to gain speed. Izuku stood back, waiting for the right moment as he secured his black collar around his neck. At the first obstacle, a group of robots from the entrance exam awaited them. Several students used their quirks to disable the robots while others dodged their attacks to keep moving. Suddenly, they encountered 3 zero-pointers blocking their path. Sumiko utilized her ice powers to create a glacier that struck one of the robots. As the robot began to tilt forward, it threatened to fall on several students. A green blur rushed past, and Izuku, using his one-for-all form, effortlessly held the robot up. He jokingly apologized for taking his time before pulling back his left arm and delivering a powerful punch to the robot's chest, sending it flying into the sky. Present Mike commented on Izuku's impressive start as he returned to his normal form and continued running. The next obstacle was a large chasm with stone pillars connected by ropes. The leading students leaped from platform to platform or swung across the ropes. Kasumi flew halfway before completing the jump, while Sumiko launched herself with another ice pillar. Izuku, near the back of the group, transformed into his demon form and easily leaped across the chasm, switching to his angel form. As Angelina, with her glowing white wings, took flight, she murmured to herself about needing to catch up. She soared over the minefield, taking the lead. Present Mike announced her impressive feat as she returned to the stadium and transformed back into Izuku. Midnight declared Izuku Midoriya as the first-place winner, and he paused in the center of the stadium to wave at the cheering crowd. Chapter End. Sports Festival. The Cavalry Battle. The battle of getting better is never-ending. Antonio Brown. In the center of the stadium, Midnight announced that Izuku Midoriya had claimed first place, prompting him to wave to the cheering crowd. After Izuku crossed the finish line, the remaining students completed the course, with only the first 42 allowed to advance to the next competition. Class 1A and most of Class 1B made it through, alongside a few unique individuals, including a human Sasquatch and Nito Monoma, but the presence of 3 general department students and 2 support department students was particularly intriguing. Midnight took the stage again, explaining the next event, the cavalry battle. Students would form groups of 3 or 4, with the individual holding the most points designated as the rider, who would wear a headband. Present Mike chimed in, revealing the scoreboard on the jumbotrons, detailing the point distribution, with Izuku receiving a staggering 1 million points for being in first place. Izuku felt the weight of everyone's attention as they directed their competitive energy toward him, save for a few supportive classmates. Midnight announced that they had 5 minutes to form teams, and immediately, students dispersed to create their groups. 3 new classmates approached Izuku, Tempi-ru, who jumped onto his back, while Hansuki Hikaru greeted him with a fist bump. Kira Masubi approached hesitantly, rubbing her forearm nervously. Tempi excitedly addressed Izuku, but he gently set her down before commenting on their newly formed team. He noticed the rest of Class 1A casting glances in his direction and asked if something was wrong. Hansuki expressed concern about their classmates seemingly ignoring him, to which Izuku shrugged, explaining that defeating him would grant them an instant victory, likely leading them to avoid hard feelings. His cheerful demeanor reassured some of the female students, easing their tension. With the teams registered, they took their positions at the edge of the ring. Izuku stood at the forefront, sporting a headband that signified his impressive point total, while Hansuki prepared with his support gear. Tempi positioned herself on the right, and Kira on the left. Midnight shouted for the battle to begin, and many teams charged toward Izuku's group. Izuku urged his teammates to hold on tight as he activated his angel physiology quirk, summoning blades that formed a protective wall between their team and the others. Despite the strain, he remained determined. Tempi taunted the opposing teams, and as she began to sing, Angelica used her powers to levitate the blades around them. Sumiko's team was the first to retaliate, launching an ice attack at Team Izuku. However, one of the blades intercepted the ice, causing it to shatter and inadvertently snipping a few strands of Sumiko's hair. Undeterred, she attempted the same attack again, but Kuriyuki, in her Tails of Fire form, defended their team. Tempi's singing subtly enhanced her teammates' strength, allowing Kuriyuki to block most incoming attacks. Any that did breach their defenses were met with Kira's cement golems or Hansuki's gadgets, forming a solid line of protection. Kuriyuki, feeling confident, decided to take the initiative. She soared above the fray, snatching headbands from other teams while they chased after her. Returning to her own team, she proudly displayed her spoils, earning praise from Hansuki, who affectionately patted her head. Kuriyuki playfully protested, asserting her independence. As the battle continued, Kira warned her teammates of an incoming attack, and Hansuki quickly intervened, using his plasma pistol to fend off Dark Shadow's grasp. However, Sumiko's team pressed on, attempting to freeze their defenses once more, but only succeeded in immobilizing one of Kira's golems. Kuriyuki, now in her Drago form, took to the skies, observing the battlefield. Sumiko taunted Izuku, questioning his bravery, but Hansuki shot back, defending his friend with a serious glare. Kira reminded them of Izuku's supportive nature, which caught Sumiko off guard as Kira's golem struck the ground, creating a shockwave. Once the onslaught from Sumiko's team subsided, Drago reverted back to Izuku, who reassured Hansuki to aim for stunning rather than incapacitating their opponents. He noted that only 5 minutes remained in the battle and established a mental link with Nike, the goddess of victory, requesting her not to intervene. In response, a new voice introduced itself as Themis, the Titan goddess of divine law, indicating she had matters to discuss with Izuku after the competition. As the battle raged on, Kasumi attempted another attack, but Kira's golem thwarted her efforts. Izuku decided it was time to unleash another transformation, activating his ghoul physiology quirk, taking on a new guise as the battle intensified. This is a hero school, not an interdimensional fighting tournament, Hansuki thought as Kaneki activated his Kagun, summoning a tail-like appendage of pure blood. The story had taken a turn, with the initial excitement fading. The number of readers had dropped significantly, and the author pondered the reasons behind it. The strange storyline, character development, and the powers given to Izuku seemed to be the main culprits. The timeline was chaotic, with unexpected family members appearing and plot twists that felt out of place. The author acknowledged the creation of an overpowered character and attempted to balance things out, but it never seemed to work. No matter the villain introduced, the goddesses would grant Izuku a quirk to overcome them, which felt frustratingly unbalanced. Writing had become tedious, and attempts to introduce interesting elements often failed. Plans for character interactions and dates were left unfulfilled, leading to a sense of monotony. The author had other stories to manage, adding pressure that made it hard to focus on this one. They recognized that their other works were more enjoyable, which added to the frustration of this particular story. Acknowledging the contributions of those who provided original characters or ideas, the author felt regret that those elements might never see the light of day. A vote was held to determine the story's fate, Continue writing, end it with an epic battle scene, or rewrite it. The results lean towards a rewrite, prompting the author to promise a more coherent storyline with powers that made sense. An announcement would follow regarding the release of the first chapter, but first, there would be an epic battle scene to conclude the current narrative. As the author reflected on their journey, they shared the results of a recent poll regarding their stories. The overwhelming interest in Boku no Hero Academia stories was evident, despite their desire to explore other series. They sought feedback on why they should continue with this franchise and expressed a willingness to hear thoughts on their other works. During the sports festival, Izuku enjoyed some funnel cake and conversation with fellow heroes before being pulled aside by Sumiko. She expressed her determination to surpass him, declaring that she would beat him no matter what. Izuku, maintaining a serious demeanor, gently poked her forehead, questioning her promise. He asserted that she couldn't defeat him without using all her power, leaving her speechless as he walked away. Continuing his search for his classmates, Izuku encountered Endeavor, who requested that he encourage his daughter to use her quirk. Izuku, momentarily transforming into his devil form, declined, stating it was her choice and that he would simply enjoy the show. After their brief exchange, Izuku found his classmates in the reserved seating for Class 1A. He settled next to Gwen, spotting his new friends scattered throughout the area. Just as he was about to engage with Gwen, Midnight took the stage, announcing the final event of the sports festival, the tournament battles. The excitement built as the names of the teams were revealed, including Team Izuku, Team Sumiko, Team Kasumi, and Team Mashireo. Unfortunately, 2 participants had withdrawn, so Ibara Shiozaki and Tetsu were brought in. The Jumbotrons displayed a tournament bracket, and Izuku was fortunate to find that his match was first. Midnight announced the first match, Izuku Midoriya vs Hitoshi Shinso. As the 2 competitors made their way to the field, Aizawa and Present Mike provided commentary. Present Mike excitedly introduced Hitoshi Shinso, the ever-tired general department student, as he walked to the arena, sighing at his title. Then he introduced Izuku Midoriya, the selfless hero who defied expectations. Izuku walked to the other side of the arena, feeling the need to respond to the commentary. He remarked that he had taken a hit and been thrown into a wall, but it could have been worse, prompting some laughter from the crowd. Midnight interrupted the banter, standing on a podium as the referee. She declared that the match between Hitoshi Shinso and Izuku Midoriya would begin. At that moment, Izuku activated One for All's full cowl, preparing to see Hitoshi's quirk. Hitoshi taunted Izuku, questioning the capabilities of the hero course. Izuku felt a vain throb on his forehead as Hitoshi continued to mock him, suggesting that even the professionals considered him foolish despite being the best in his class. Izuku attempted to respond, but Hitoshi's quirk immobilized him, compelling him to move toward the boundary. Despite his mind fighting for control, Izuku's body began to comply with Hitoshi's command. He mentally screamed that he did not come to lose as he glanced at the gate he had entered from. There he saw 8 shadowy figures, one resembling the lean form of All Might, while the others remained mysterious with glowing eyes. Suddenly, Izuku channeled One for All into his finger and released it in a gust of wind, breaking free from Hitoshi's control. Without hesitation, he turned around and activated his full cowl once more. Hitoshi, surprised, tried to ask how he had escaped, but Izuku responded with a powerful punch that sent Hitoshi flying out of the ring. Midnight announced Izuku as the winner of the match. He approached Hitoshi to shake his hand, which Hitoshi accepted, and both competitors left the arena shortly after. Midnight then announced the second match would be between Sumiko Todoroki and Hantashiro. As soon as the match began, Sumiko created a glacier that encased Hanta, rendering him unable to move and securing her victory. Midnight declared Sumiko the winner, while Izuku used his healing abilities to unfreeze Hanta. The next match featured Ibara Shiozaki against Daichi Kaminari. This match was one-sided, as Ibara's vines captured Daichi, allowing her to throw him out of the arena. Ibara, true to her nature, immediately apologized for her actions. Midnight announced Ibara as the winner, while Cementos repaired the arena from the damage caused by Ibara's vines. The next match was Tenya Ida versus Hansuki Hikaru. However, Hansuki entered the arena and announced his intention to forfeit, explaining that he preferred not to reveal all his gadgets and had plans for a hero agency. This left Tenya as the default winner. Midnight then announced the match between Mina Ishido and Yuga Oyama. Mina quickly defeated Yuga by destroying his belt. After her brief celebration, the next match was Tempi-ru versus Momo Yaoyorozu, but Tempi chose to forfeit, recognizing she could not win. The seventh match featured Ijiro Kirishima against Tetsu, which was evenly matched to the point where they had to arm wrestle. Thanks to Captain Marvel's training, Ijiro emerged victorious through sheer endurance. Next was the match between Kira Masubi and Kasumi Bakugo. Kasumi, preferring solitude, was approached by Izuku, Hansuki, and Tempi, who wanted to strategize with Kira. Kira had a plan involving her golem quirk but was cautious about revealing her best move too soon. As she contemplated her strategy, Hansuki leaned against the wall while Tempi sat beside Kira. Izuku handed Kira a small notebook filled with notes about heroes and students, explaining that while it might seem like cheating in the world of heroes, knowledge about quirks and abilities was crucial. He left them to strategize as he went to recruit Gwen for his new agency. The match began with Kasumi charging at Kira with her signature explosive right hook. Kira quickly summoned a golem to protect herself. After the initial clash, Kasumi backed up only to summon 2 more golems. However, she managed to push through and unleashed a massive explosion, which scorched parts of Kira's jacket and sent her flying out of the arena. Midnight announced Kasumi Bakugo as the winner and called for a 30-minute intermission to allow the students to recover and repair the arena. Izuku took this opportunity to carry Kira to the infirmary, using his healing abilities to ensure she would not bear any scars. He reassured her that she had done well and promised to defeat Kasumi for her. After healing Kira, Izuku left her to rest in the infirmary as he prepared for his next match against Sumiko. He knew this would be his toughest challenge yet, especially since he was limited to 5 quirks and switching them mid-match could be risky. Deciding to take a break, he went to grab some takoyaki, as several heroes had recommended it. Present Mike announced that the match between Sumiko Todoroki and Izuku Midoriya would start in 5 minutes, urging the competitors to head to the waiting room immediately. Izuku sighed before making his way to waiting room B. Yue had the worst timing, Izuku thought as he waited, hearing the constant pattern of footsteps in the hallway. If he could get Sumiko to go all out, he might be able to impress her or showcase his limit break. In his thoughts, he heard the muffled voice of Midnight announcing the match. Sumiko Todoroki from Class 1A was introduced first, entering the arena with her usual poker face. Then, Izuku Midoriya from Class 1A followed, quickly running out to wave at the crowd before taking his place in the arena, adopting his own serious expression. Izuku called out to Sumiko, urging her not to hold back, teasing that he might hurt her pretty face. The audience chuckled at his playful banter, but Sumiko remained unresponsive. Midnight then declared the match to begin. In an instant, Izuku transformed into his demon form, known as Daisuke, while Sumiko summoned ice from her right foot, spreading it rapidly toward him. Before the ice could reach him, Izuku slammed his fist onto the ground, creating a wall of fire that melted the approaching ice. Present Mike announced the turn of events, noting that Sumiko would have to rethink her strategy. As she attempted her attack again, Izuku leaped over the oncoming ice, landing dramatically and creating a crater a few meters away from her. Izuku declared that playtime was over, his body glowing red as he unleashed a burst of crimson flames. He challenged Sumiko to show her true power, while she encased herself in a dome of ice, which melted under the intense heat. Sumiko, determined, pointed her hand at Izuku, creating a wall of ice in front of her. She insisted she wouldn't rely on his power as Izuku switched to his one-for-all quirk. With no hesitation, he activated his 10% full cowl, shattering the ice wall into shards that flew past Sumiko, embedding themselves in the stadium walls. He lowered his head, allowing his hair to obscure his eyes dramatically. He revealed that he had never used his own power before, explaining that it had been granted to him through a deal. He expressed his fear of losing control over his abilities but vowed to honor the gods who bestowed this power upon him by bringing peace to a corrupted world. At that moment, his necklace and bracelets glowed a vibrant green, engulfing him in green flames. As the flames subsided, he transformed into his one-for-all form, with green flames sprouting from his eyes, arms, and legs. He declared that he had been given this power to protect those who couldn't protect themselves, announcing his infinite burst. In response, Sumiko covered the arena floor with ice and created pillars to jump from. Izuku stood firm, taking a deep breath and tapping his foot on the ground, causing cracks to spread through the ice as a gust of wind swept through the stadium. He encouraged Sumiko to embrace her own power, regardless of its origin. Sumiko, determined, warned him that he had asked for what would come next. Her left side ignited in flames, and as her clothes began to burn away, the temperature in the stadium rose, with Endeavor watching proudly from the stands. In an instant, Izuku dashed across the arena, punching the ground to create a large crater and sending massive shards of concrete into the air. Sumiko spread ice across the northern half of the arena while her flames consumed the southern half, leaving the center empty. Within moments, Izuku struck the largest concrete shard, sending it flying towards Sumiko along with the other shards. Realizing the ice and fire were closing in, he leaped high into the air to evade the attacks. However, Sumiko was not as fortunate. The air pressure from Izuku's punch caused the first shard of concrete to graze her cheek, forcing her to dodge as more shards flew by, ultimately knocking her out of the arena. Midnight announced Izuku as the winner, holding onto her podium for support. As the crowd searched for the victor, Izuku landed dramatically in the center of the arena, striking a heroic pose. He remarked on the match, noting it was a good fight, while his suit faded away, leaving him in his P uniform, which was now tattered. He suggested they change into something more appropriate, causing the female audience to blush at his toned physique, while the males reacted similarly to Sumiko's burned jacket and damaged pants. Midnight suggested a short intermission, trying to hide her own blush. Izuku then picked Sumiko up in a bridal carry, both of them blushing at the unexpected closeness. After the intense battle, Izuku and Sumiko rested in Recovery Girl's office, where Sumiko's minor injuries healed, and Izuku prepared for the finals. They were soon joined by Hansuki, Tempi, and Kira, who brought news. Hansuki congratulated Izuku on his performance, noticing Sumiko resting nearby and greeting her with a sincere smile, which she returned with a small, bright smile. Tempi excitedly relayed a message from Ida, wishing Izuku good luck in the finals and playfully threatening him to win, which caused Izuku to wince in pain and collapse to the floor. Kira leaned down to assist him back into his chair while Hansuki checked his pulse, clearly concerned for Izuku's well-being.